Kalfa knelt in the dirt, her golden hair falling around her face. She had already made peace with dying for her homeland, Saldia. That resolve was all she had left. Her voice turned bitter as she recalled how it happened. A dragon loomed behind her captors. She had been taken by this strange group before she could do anything to stop it. Rogue smiled quietly, hand pressed to his chest as though sealing a promise. Behind him, the woman who had brought Kalfa in stood close. Eanes announced that she had finally found the woman Rogue was searching for. Kalfa, shaken, wondered how she had ended up captured at such a critical moment. Kalfa lashed out, her blade flashing toward Rogue in an attempt to break free. Her appraisal skill activated on instinct, reading the army that surrounded her. The results revealed skeletons standing in ranks, former soldiers now reborn as undead troops under a single banner, bound by something called the Necromancer's Pledge. Kalfa realized the truth: countless dead across the land had been resurrected in recent years, all under the control of one Necromancer. Watching Rogue, she noted he carried none of the menace she expected from a monster of his rank. Eanes laughed, certain that capturing Kalfa brought them closer to fulfilling Log's long-held wish. She explained that Kalfa was one of the 7 sages serving the Saldian Empire, and the strongest appraiser alive. Rogue questioned why their guest looked so exhausted, asking if Inez had done something rough beyond simply tying her up. Inez brushed it off, insisting there was another reason. Nidhogg explained that the Saldian Empire was under invasion by monsters, its army thrown into panic and likely beaten back. The fighting only grew worse. Wave after wave of monsters pressed forward as Saldia's forces collapsed around Kalfa, who had led the army herself. Word spread that Emperor Nad had fled the battlefield, abandoning his people. Kalfa stood alone amid the wreckage, the last of the 7 sages still standing to hold back the ruin. Rogue admitted this must feel like insult added to injury from her perspective. Kalfa agreed bitterly, disbelieving that she had been captured by a necromancer while her empire crumbled. Rogue stepped forward and said he had a request. Behind him, his undead soldiers let out a low, hollow roar in answer. Kalfa lowered her head, accepting that she, as the one who commanded the army, would likely be killed for its failure. Desperate, she cried out, deciding she had nothing left to lose. She begged Rogue to save her country, whatever the cost to herself. Eanes cut in coldly, telling Kalfa to know her place as a lowly human, saying she and the others could be discarded once their purpose was served. He asked Inez whether she thought every human besides him was worthless, admitting her attitude genuinely unsettled him. Turning to Kalfa, Rogue asked if she was willing to hear what he had to offer. Then, with quiet certainty, he told her that he intended to save her country. Rogue assigned Inez command of the immortal army and asked Nidhogg to scout the enemy's strength from above. Kalfa, overwhelmed, vowed to give her body and mind entirely to him if it meant saving the Empire. Rogue turned to Kalfa, calling her their guide from here on. Nidhogg took to the sky without hesitation, and Inez confirmed she would follow his orders exactly. Kalfa thanked him from the bottom of her heart, promising to guide them faithfully. When Rogue asked what his own purpose truly was, he only said it could wait until everything was over. On the battlefield, Saldian soldiers were being pushed back, their squad leaders shouting for them to hold the line for the Empire's sake. Rogue asked for a breakdown of the enemy forces. A soldier reported that this was a goblin-led army, commanded by 10 goblin kings, each leading their own faction currently tearing through the Saldian Empire. Kalfa noted that imperial numbers were dropping fast, faster than goblins alone should cause. Even minotaurs had joined the assault, and something about the coordination didn't sit right with her. She theorized that soldiers were being herded off cliffs by the goblins, trapped and picked off after being cut from retreat. Rogue asked if she meant the goblins and minotaurs were working together. Rogue suspected someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes. He told Nidhogg to wait in the sky and watch for the moment imperial soldiers were driven toward the cliffs, ready to strike the moment he gave the signal. Nidhogg roared as Rogue released the Necromancer's Pledge, unleashing the army's true power against the coordinated threat below. Eanes took charge of wiping out the minotaurs herself, declaring the progenitor Demon King Inez Lucifer would handle it alone. Eanes transformed, wings spreading wide as she remarked it had been a long time since she'd taken this form. Rogue released the pledge once more, scattering his skeletal soldiers across the field, promising to deliver more than anyone expected of him. The undead surged forward in a storm of motion, closing in on the trapped and battered Imperial forces below. Kalfa froze, recognizing the name Inez Lucifer, and realizing with dread what Nidhogg truly was. Nidhogg called out cheerfully, asking if it was time for them to get moving as well. On the Imperial battlefield, soldiers struggled against minotaurs capable of ending a fight with a single blow, cursing the goblins' unexpected cunning. Officers realized that toppling the organized goblin army meant killing its ruling goblin king, but the enemy had already set the surrounding land ablaze. The trapped soldiers realized they had nowhere left to run, boxed in against the rocks. Amid the chaos, a soldier asked if anyone had seen Kalfa since the last major clash with the goblins. No one had seen her in a while. The men recalled how Kalfa had taken command after they were abandoned by their superiors, encouraging them to keep fighting. An officer rallied his soldiers, declaring this the place where the noble spirit of Saldia would make its stand. He urged them to kill as many monsters as possible and build mountains of corpses if that was what it took, reminding these vile creatures exactly who they were dealing with. The soldiers spotted something and cried out for Inez and Nidhogg, their voices breaking through the chaos of battle as an explosion tore across the field. A voice warned the fighters to stay right where they were, calling them fools. Above them, a dragon's roar shattered the air. Rogue was named Ardent Hades as his magic of destruction tore through the battlefield, cutting down the monsters surrounding the soldiers. He told them to consider it an honor, for they were about to witness something extraordinary. His undead army surged forward as one, moving with terrifying precision, a performance the soldiers could only describe as their master's amazing display of power. Words spread fast that a massive zombie skeleton army had appeared, assaulting the monsters from behind. The trapped soldiers realized this was their chance to break free from the siege at last. Rogue raised his hand and unleashed a technique he called Black Hole, a devastating application of destruction magic that swallowed the battlefield in light. The soldiers stared in disbelief, certain no human should be capable of wielding this much magic, questioning whether it was some kind of space magic they had never seen before. The battlefield fell silent as the fighting ended. One soldier reported that all 8 minotaurs had been defeated, and the men could hardly believe they had actually been saved. A soldier thanked Rogue sincerely for the reinforcements, still dazed as he recalled the dragon and the black-winged woman from earlier. Rogue introduced himself simply as Lo Kusel. A nearby soldier tensed, recognizing something familiar as his identity registered. His profile confirmed it plainly: Lo Kusel, human. Necromancer, Rogue assured them. He held no hostility toward anyone, just so they knew. The soldiers reacted with disbelief, repeating the word necromancer among themselves, listing the horror stories they'd heard: corpses used for cruelty, kingdoms built on the deaths of beautiful women, entire countries destroyed by immortal armies. Rogue explained calmly that he was simply keeping a promise made to Kalfa. One soldier remarked bitterly that necromancy truly was seen as a taboo occupation. Rogue stated he had only one purpose, that if he could save their country, they would agree to hear him out in return. He asked her to use her appraiser ability to conceal his true occupation as a necromancer from the world. Kalfa asked if he meant the skill known as concealment. She agreed to honor her promise as one of the 7 sages, though she admitted the reactions from moments ago left her uneasy. Kalfa remembered suddenly asking about the dragon and the black-winged woman she'd seen earlier, saying she'd wanted to bring it up herself. She recognized Nidhogg as the Dragon King from ancient Saldian legend, and Inez Lucifer as the first demon king who had once plunged the world into chaos, the very woman who had stood beside him. Kalfa shouted, calling it unbelievable that a mere necromancer could command legendary beings spoken of only in myths from centuries past. She demanded to know what his real purpose was if all of this turned out to be true. Rogue hesitated for a moment, then admitted quietly that all he had ever wanted was to make friends. A soldier praised him warmly, telling him he'd done well, while Nidhogg teased Inez for finally managing to compliment their lord properly for the first time. Nidhogg explained that no human had ever dared come close to Rogue because of his overwhelming strength and his forbidden occupation. He had lived his entire life isolated without a single friend. Kalfa turned to the soldiers around her, insisting these people had genuinely saved them from disaster. She told them plainly that she wanted their view of necromancers changed from this moment forward. The soldiers answered together, agreeing at once. Kalfa then proposed one idea to properly fulfill her promise to Rogue, declaring to everyone present that these two were their true heroes. She asked if he would like to become an adventurer registered under a guild within the Saldian Empire, offering to disguise his true occupation as a necromancer under that new title instead. Rogue lit up, calling it the perfect new start and accepting her offer immediately, excited by the thought of gaining something for himself out of this. Rogue described himself simply as a lonely former necromancer. Nothing more. Kalfa studied him quietly, feeling as though her entire understanding of the world had been turned upside down. As the sun set over open fields, Kalfa offered to guide him personally toward the heart of the Saldian Empire, marking the beginning of his journey to finally make friends. Rogue had been alone since his days in the orphanage. Necromancers were seen as beings death always followed, and no one dared come near him. All he ever wanted was friends. Years later, In the Saldia Empire, Rogue prepared to hide his true identity. His concealment was complete. Today, his old life as a feared necromancer would end. Rogue cheered alongside his companion, thrilled that his disguise as an ordinary adventurer had worked. He thanked Kalfa, the appraiser who helped him keep his identity hidden, grateful she had followed him all the way into the Empire to fulfill her promise. Elsewhere, soldiers reported that Emperor Nad Saldia, who had fled the capital, was confirmed killed by a goblin army. Kalfa asked them to keep the Emperor's disgraceful end quiet, revealing that she would now stand as the Empire's acting head. Kalfa advised Rogue to register at the capital's largest guild, noting how burdensome it must be for him to inherit the throne from such a shameful predecessor. Kalfa noticed that Inez and Nidhogg, unlike the rest of Rogue's undead army, never vanished at night. Rogue explained he had used his art of incarnation on them, calling the two his most trusted followers. Kalfa was stunned to learn the two were fully revived, not merely reanimated like his other undead. Such a feat required SSS-Rank magic, a skill said to be unattainable even by the legendary Seven Sages, since necromancers were rarely welcomed anywhere. Rogue admitted he had never belonged to a guild and didn't understand how rank verification worked. Kalfa suggested the Adventurers Guild could explain it properly. Grateful for her help, Rogue promised never to forget the favor. The two agreed to meet again once he reached the guild. Nervous since it was his first time posing as an ordinary adventurer, Rogue reassured himself he wouldn't be seen as a necromancer. Inez teased that no matter what, he would always be their lord, and surely capable of making friends. They arrived at Ascalon, the Saldia Empire's Adventurers Guild, greeted warmly by the staff. Rogue excitedly announced he had come to take the certification exam now that the adventurer occupation had appeared for him. The other adventurers turned surprised by the unusual group entering the hall. A guild member named Ligurdo explained that joining a guild would reveal a new element to his status, eventually assigning him a job specialty. The system explained that unlike magicians or thieves, those with superior physical strength were suited for the swordsman's specialty, matching Rogue's build. Ligurdo admitted his own dream was to reach SS rank someday, encouraging Rogue to complete guild requests diligently. Kalfa was noted as the strongest known existence in the country, holding SS rank in intelligence, a level comparable only to the Seven Sages. As Rogue placed his hand on the crystal, his true occupation appeared. Adventurer, necromancer, leaving the girl beside him stunned that she couldn't read what lay inside the brackets. His full status revealed staggering numbers: physical strength, muscle strength, defense, magic, agility, and intelligence, all at SSS rank, leaving everyone around him speechless. The guild hall erupted in disbelief as Rogue's experience points read Jojo. Kalfa and the others could only stare in shock at the impossible number. Some insisted it had to be a system bug, unable to accept that a person's ability values could all be this excellent. The other adventurers whispered among themselves, stunned into laughter. Nidhogg roared with pride, boasting that his lord had crushed countless armies, even during his failed attempt to conquer the world, calling it a nostalgic memory. Inez simply sighed at how foolish her fellow dragon sounded. A veteran adventurer scoffed at the idea of an SSS rank existing at all, only for Gran to silence the crowd, warning them not to get worked up over a mere new recruit before their own promotion exam began. Since no one present had ever witnessed an SSS rank before, some began accusing Rogue of altering the crystal. A warning flashed instead, confirming his status had been under concealment and tampering all along. Rogue laughed it off, though Gran's sharp words had clearly struck a nerve. Regardless, the old man decided they would find out exactly what Rogue could do soon enough. Gran's team called out, reminding everyone it was time for their own promotion exam. Ligurdo revealed he was taking the A-rank exam for the second time. Rogue admitted his priority was getting recognized as a proper adventurer first, hoping friendship would follow naturally. Rogue gently asked her to calm down. Inez only questioned why they shouldn't cut ties with people who spoke ill of him. The exam convened at the guild's chosen site, Delaware Valley, where the examiners prepared to explain the details of the trial ahead. To everyone's surprise, the appraiser assigned to oversee the exam turned out to be someone very familiar to Rogue's group. A soldier bluntly asked why a noblewoman like her was present in such a place. Kalfa Schneevel answered plainly that she would be the one in charge this time. She explained that after the recent monster attack exposed the country's lack of military strength, she wanted to assess everyone's true ability with her own eyes, daring anyone to voice a complaint. 3 teams were announced for this round, 2 taking promotion exams, and 1 Rogue's group taking the Adventurer Certification exam instead. The third group, Regulus's Heart, was a B-class team led by Gran Kalma, while the second, Dread Fire, was a C-class team led by Ligurdo's Siphon. Kalfa asked if everyone was ready. Ligurdo answered with determination, vowing to do his best, while his teammate cheered them on to give it their all. The dungeon boss awaiting them on the 10th floor of Delaware Valley was Orochi, the target Regulus's heart needed to defeat for their A-rank promotion. Orochi possessed 8 heads capable of spewing neurotoxins. To pass, the team would need to deliver all 8 heads, a mission now formally assigned to the 3 members of Regulus's heart. Meanwhile, Rogue's task was far simpler, a cleaning mission on the 1st floor, drawing an unimpressed look from Inez as she carried him along. Kalfa explained that due to monster corpses and litter left behind by careless adventurers, the 1st floor had become filled with trash. Lastly, Dreadfire's team prepared for their B-rank promotion exam, tasked with subjugating a pack of muscle wolves on the 6th floor. Kalfa mentioned that clearing Rogue's group exam would take around 2 hours. Rogue and Inez approached the entrance of the dungeon, eyes wide with excitement at the sight ahead. They stepped inside, marveling at the bones and remains scattered across the ground. Realizing they had finally reached the 1st floor, Kalfa and her companions decided to hold back and observe how Rogue handled his mission, still doubting whether someone with all SSS-rank abilities could truly exist. One of them gasped, watching from a distance as Rogue confirmed once again just how absurd his SSS rank truly was. Kalfa wondered aloud what Inez and Nidhogg had been up to, watching them cheer Rogue on, admiring how reliable he already seemed even as an adventurer. Rogue considered trying a spell Nidhogg had once taught him for the first time, while his companions worried whether he had prepared properly. Rogue unleashed his spell, Typhoon, a dragon attribute magic that tore through the area with tremendous force. He followed it with an even more devastating spell, the magic of destruction known as Black Hole, ripping the battlefield apart. Rogue turned back nervously, asking if what he had just done was even acceptable for the task at hand. Kalfa stared in disbelief, realizing he had just set the fastest clearing record in guild history, finishing everything in a mere 5 seconds. Rogue was declared to have passed the Adventurer Certification exam, with all the trash on the 1st floor completely eliminated by his magic. Watching this unfold, Kalfa quietly admitted to herself that if his SSS rank truly was real, then Rogue was far from ordinary, someone whose presence in this country could change everything. Elsewhere, deep in the dungeon, Regulus's heart's leader realized something was clearly wrong, calling out that this situation had become an emergency on the 10th floor. Something massive was unfolding ahead, forcing the team to rush forward toward the source of the disturbance. Rogue observed Ligurdo confidently describe expedition fundamentals while marching deeper across dangerous Delaware Valley. Kalfa reassured anxious Rogue alongside quiet Inez before enigmatic transportation carried everyone underground safely. Ligurdo rushed rashly towards growling creatures, shouting fearlessly while enormous beasts attacked violently nearby. Horrified comrades shouted frantically as Ligurdo struck repeatedly, forcing savage creatures backward across battlefields. Nidhogg condemned feeble creatures alongside puzzled Inez, while amazed Rogue admired Ligurdo's overwhelming strength. Kalfa cautioned weary Ligurdo cautiously as shrinking healing supplies endangered their reckless monster expedition. Rogue commended cooperation genuinely alongside grinning Kalfa, while Inez questioned unnecessary risks during battles. He abruptly detected unusual presence close by while Nidhogg and Kalfa watched his reaction. Inez disclosed troubling details regarding Delaware Valley's enigmatic 10th floor while Rogue investigated. Rogue raced bravely towards perilous levels, leaving shocked Kalfa and worried Inez standing speechless. Gran announced perilous conditions hastily as exhausted adventurers gathered nervously around wounded companions nearby. Countless goblins encircled fighting explorers as Orochi monsters overwhelmed defenders across Delaware Valley completely. Gran ordered scared explorers fiercely as monstrous attackers cornered vulnerable fighters during chaotic combat nearby. Hostile monsters progressed ceaselessly as desperate adventurers considered retreating before overwhelming magical attacks arrived suddenly. Gran rejected seeking support confidently as Rogue and Kalfa observed dangerous examination battles silently nearby. Brutal Orochi assaults hit weary explorers while Gran criticized careless complaints during dangerous combat. Horrifying creatures dropped fiercely as frightened adventurers realized overwhelming enemies completely surrounded their weakened formation. Rogue offered facing Orochi himself as instructing surviving adventurers immediately request reinforcements upstairs. Gran reassured resolute Rogue bravely as wounded explorers awaited desperately needed assistance from nearby allies. He guarded defenseless comrades cautiously as monstrous attacks continued smashing relentlessly across chaotic battlegrounds. Gran found poisonous wounds spreading swiftly as weary explorers feared inevitable defeat approaching nearby desperately. He carried on battling ferocious creatures fiercely regardless, weakening injuries, damaging his weary body severely close by. Brutal hostile assaults hit Gran straightforwardly, while surrounding adventurers watched horrifying combat unfold helplessly nearby. Gran ordered scared healers escape promptly as monstrous monsters chased defenseless survivors across dangerous battlegrounds. Wounded Gran reassured escaping comrades quietly as determined survivors promised returning quickly with reinforcements nearby. Gran expressed regret silently as readying prohibited dragon magic beside exhausted companion beneath dark cavern. Brutal worm breath exploded forward, destroying numerous creatures nearby. Wounded adventurers across Delaware Valley. Remaining explorers observed gigantic devastation silently while Gran collapsed weakly beside frightened companions nearby. Rogue rushed towards wounded Gran promptly as concerned healers followed closely through lingering smoke. Gran and remaining explorers stared speechlessly after recognizing enigmatic Rogue, abruptly reaching perilous battlegrounds. Rogue reached weary explorers abruptly as remaining healers treated heavily wounded Gran carefully. Rogue described sensing perilous sorcery earlier as apologizing helplessly for Gran's severe injuries. Genuinely, Gran appreciated Rogue, thankfully as relieved explorers commended courageous assistance during desperate battles nearby. He promised informing Kalfa honestly about Rogue's heroic deeds, regardless doubtful trial irregularities immediately. Sudden ruinous sorcery erupted brutally underneath survivors as collapsing terrain terrified nearby adventurers. Completely. Gran guided remaining explorers warily towards collapsed ruins underneath Delaware Valley's dangerous 10th floor underground. Rogue confirmed concealed 11th level life as stunned adventurers questioned impossible discoveries beneath dangerous caverns nearby. Curious explorers examined enigmatic below-ground passageways cautiously, while debris scattered across destroyed cavern pathways everywhere. Rogue understood unnatural structures existed below ground as examining doubtful construction marks alongside frightened companions carefully. Gran found abandoned explorer arms sadly as discussing vanished exploration teams from previous dangerous expeditions. Gran described lost explorers generally requested backup before disappearing completely beneath dangerous underground ruins. Kalfa and Inez appeared hurriedly below ground as checking Rogue and Gran's perilous inquiry progress. Rogue detected ominous danger as puzzled explorers examined enigmatic underground holes cautiously together. Gran found Empire Army equipment below ground as Kalfa identified Saldia Empire insignias carefully beside scattered remains. Gran challenged nationwide corruption as discussing doubtful Empire involvement surrounding Delaware Valley disappearances. Lost explorer teams and unlikely goblin assaults increased rapidly throughout Delaware Valley. Inez discussed declining association elimination missions as adventurers struggled obtaining essential healing potions. Gran described tainted officials prevented explorers investigating doubtful incidents nearby Delaware Valley disappearances. Stunned Rogue concerned perilous conspiracies might prevent achieving legitimate explorer status within Saldia domain. Kalfa promised revealing concealed truths honestly as describing enigmatic nationwide corruption surrounding dangerous underground incidents. Kalfa spotted remote sobbing echoes below ground as cautious explorers investigated unfamiliar tunnels beneath Delaware Valley. A scared elf girl begged frantically for support as stunned Rogue and Nidhogg recognized something suspicious underground. They found scared elf girl inhabiting prohibited trial floors as companions cautiously investigated caverns. Rogue quietly reassured wounded elf as checking conditions alongside anxious adventurers inside underground passages. Kalfa described persecuted elves received Empire protection, regardless enduring slavery, discrimination, and historical suffering. The elf girl frantically requested support rescuing leftover villagers as collapsing before Rogue's comrades. Rogue learned remaining elves initially occupied eastern forests before unidentified threats devastated their settlement. The elf girl disclosed enigmatic mankind ruined villages, driving captured elves producing healing potions. Rogue found abused elves suffering brutal punishments as scared elf girl frantically guarded villagers. Rogue comforted weeping her softly as Kalfa understood mankind orchestrated kidnappings behind hidden operations. Kalfa described elves produced recovery elixirs nationwide as suspecting manipulators governed imperial distribution systems. Rogue courteously inquired her name. Scared elf disclosed that her name was Michaela Sequelet. Rogue challenged Michaela cautiously. As Kalfa cautioned perilous monsters became increasingly violent, Kalfa frantically stopped Rogue from advancing farther below ground as Michaela anxiously observed. Rogue described explorers guarded helpless residents as mysterious underground lights suddenly illuminated cavern walls. He summoned undead monsters assuredly, declaring nighttime lands belonged entirely under Necromancer control and control. Kalfa concerned Rogue's Necromancer identity risked exposure as he prioritized guarding threatened villagers, Several explorers insisted accompanying Rogue regardless perilous conditions as veteran fighters questioned their capabilities. Inez grew flustered learning confusion about Rogue. While adventurers discussed reporting discoveries, Rogue organized comrades cautiously as Michaela guided scared explorers deeper. Empire troops brutally intimidated horrified villagers searching aggressively for missing elf survivor Michaela throughout settlements. Crooked officials ordered ancient worm seals removed, planning ruinous below-ground attacks using forbidden magical powers. Crooked troops triggered prohibited mystical seals underground while commanding hidden creatures. An gigantic worm named Asgard emerged brutally, horrifying nearby villagers and panicking Imperial soldiers. Scared residents frantically fled rampaging chaos as mysterious figures approached dangerous. Kalfa confronted advancing troops bravely as Rogue's comrades observed unfolding confrontations throughout underground settlements. Empire troops demanded identity suspiciously as nearby advancing adventurers throughout damaged underground village pathways. Kalfa disclosed Empire control openly as demanding soldiers identify affiliations controlling captured elf territories. Kalfa understood nearby creatures trailed organized commands as hostile creatures aggressively advanced. Crooked officials haughtily intimidated explorers while relying upon legendary dragon descendant Asgard. Rogue permitted Nidhogg facing ancient worms as unleashing prohibited necromancy forces throughout underground battlefields. Asgard ridiculed advancing Nidhogg as crooked troops ordered devastating flames. Asgard fiercely assaulted Nidhogg straightforwardly as gigantic explosions erupted across underground battlefield surroundings. Nidhogg unleashed mighty Yggdrasil assaults assuredly, driving Asgard withdrawing backward during intense aerial combat sequences. It ridiculed Asgard haughtily as criticizing descendants lacking intelligence, communication powers, and proper mystical understanding completely. Nidhogg described ancient worms possessed multidimensional sorcery capable stealing mighty skills across mysterious written letters. It cautioned tremendous might prevented manipulation as worms battled fiercely across dangerous underground territories continuously. Crooked official haughtily misjudged Rogue as activating dangerous magical formations. Hostile troops launched mighty fire sorcery assaults, attempting eliminating Rogue. Rogue quietly analyzed incoming mystical assaults as readying countermeasures against overwhelming destructive battlefield powers. Nidhogg described immense forces demanded direct confrontation since evasive actions proved completely ineffective during battles. Rogue triggered fire enchantments assuredly, as readying decisive assaults against approaching enemies. Rogue unleashed mighty enchanted fire, startling crooked officials witnessing impossible magical abilities during combat unexpectedly. Horrified troops retreated anxiously as enigmatic black flames continued spreading dangerously across underground battlefields rapidly. Rogue confronted crooked officials straightforwardly as questioning brutal actions committed against helpless elf villagers previously. Rogue grinned quietly towards scared magicians before abruptly launching devastating attacks without hesitation nearby immediately. Nidhogg's ruinous assaults hit hostile troops violently while explosions overwhelmed terrified soldiers across underground territories. Simultaneously, Rogue unleashed mighty enchanted fire, startling crooked officials witnessing impossible magical abilities. Horrified troops retreated anxiously as enigmatic black flames continued spreading dangerously. Rogue confronted crooked officials straightforwardly as questioning brutal actions committed against helpless elf villagers previously. He grinned quietly towards scared magicians before abruptly launching devastating attacks without hesitation. Nidhogg's ruinous assaults hit hostile troops violently while explosions overwhelmed terrified soldiers across underground territories. Nidhogg launched ruinous assaults continually as Asgard shouted painfully during overwhelming underground. Asgard crashed brutally below ground as Nidhogg assuredly described impossible victories required stronger opponents. Rogue heard gladly as Nidhogg described learning alongside mighty individuals, improving personal growth significantly. Nidhogg confessed surpassing Rogue stayed unlikely as acknowledging tremendous necromancer abilities and intelligence. Kalfa and Inez reunited alongside Rogue as Nidhogg witnessed peaceful below-ground surroundings. Inez jokingly expressed regret as Colossal overcame creatures surrounded exhausted adventurers. Michaela thankfully appreciated Rogue since rescued villagers survived securely regardless terrifying underground. Captured officials trembled fearfully as Kalfa examined Empire connections beyond brutal elf exploitation operations. Kalfa readied interrogation sorcery determinedly driving imprisoned troops revealing concealed conspiracies.
Kalfa challenged captured troops as Rogue examined kidnappings concerning underground elf transportation. Captured officials rejected betraying army secrets regardless threats, defending questionable Empire responsibilities. Kalfa triggered appraisal sorcery warily as warning troops regarding unavoidable consequences during dangerous interrogations. She exposed concealed army details openly employing powerful forced disclosure abilities against terrified officers. Kalfa described appraisal techniques disclosed private statuses unwillingly as captured troops protested angrily. Rogue found Balra domains secretly manipulated alliances as conducting perilous below-ground operations. Kalfa regretted exposing troops openly as comrades admitted appraisal abilities caused uncomfortable revelations. Rogue discussed Balra Empire's mystical dominance as Kalfa described mighty wise men controlling extraordinary abilities. Inez ridiculed Kalfa jokingly as discussing mythical wise men and Rogue's tremendous influence among companions. Kalfa described heroic titles earned defeating devils as presenting mighty international elite combat specialists. Inez recalled peaceful years previously as discussing reduced creature assaults alongside Rogue and Nidhogg. Rogue casually recalled punishing perilous creatures previously as Kalfa responded nervously. Kalfa described faltering alliances enabled victories as vowing imprisoned Balra troops remained secured. Kalfa genuinely expressed regret openly as Michaela appreciated companions gratefully for protecting vulnerable villagers. Michaela disclosed additional kidnapped elves existed elsewhere as describing enigmatic transit sorcery circles. Kalfa found progressed transportation rings below ground while companions investigated mysterious magical transportation. Balra domains secretly stole recovery potion techniques across illegal below-ground missions involving kidnapped elves. Kalfa cautioned political battles prevented immediate investigations as Rogue concerned kidnapped elves stayed endangered. She triggered purification sealing sorcery successfully as Rogue witnessed disappearing transportation circles. Kalfa reassured rescued villagers patiently as awaiting Empire troops arriving guarding everybody within underground. Rogue brightly left below-ground settlements as Michaela quietly watched companions leaving. He left caves gladly until Inez brought pressing messages regarding Ligurdo. Rogue expressed regret uneasily as Inez described unexpectedly stepping upon important letters carelessly during travels. He eagerly pictured veteran explorer duties while Kalfa listened. Kalfa joked with Rogue's daring fantasy as Nidhogg halted conversations, urging immediate departure from caverns. Kalfa received pressing contact abruptly as armored explorers neared requesting immediate important decisions. She recalled former comrades mentally as readying herself confronting dangerous upcoming battles. Rogue found Ascalon's darkened buildings as comrades examined doubtful surroundings cautiously during nighttime patrols. He went into perilous buildings regardless warnings as Nidhogg reliable senior adventurer instructions completely without hesitation. Concealed explorers surprised Rogue celebrating his successful trial completion within brightly illuminated headquarters. Rogue faltered abruptly amid festivities as Inez and Nidhogg watched confusing situations. Ligurdo brightly greeted Rogue eagerly as presenting Ascalon's famous newcomer celebration party. He commended Rogue kindly as Nidhogg admitted. Comrades respected their dependable adventurous leader. Inez witnessed Rogue grinning among comrades, understanding isolation disappeared completely from previous experiences. Nidhogg described Rogue guarded comrades kindly regardless strict behavior towards loyal servants. Occasionally, others thought silently upon Rogue's solitary history as Rogue and Inez walked peacefully. Inez recalled Rogue sacrificing personally as employing prohibited powers protecting companions from dangerous enemies. Inez wished Rogue ultimately found true joy while observing his cheerful expressions beside companions. Rogue grinned genuinely alongside comrades as Inez realized his long-awaited happiness finally arrived completely. Inez silently appreciated Rogue's comrades genuinely for transforming his solitary existence into meaningful happiness. Ligurdo eagerly invited Rogue celebrating close by as Gran and others assembled gladly around. Rogue anxiously entered joyful festivities as excited adventurers encouraged endless eating and drinking. Ligurdo reassured Rogue assuredly as describing association members deserve recognition, companionship, and supportive friendships. Rogue gladly confessed relief knowing Gran survived securely as comrades celebrated friendships together warmly nearby afterwards. Rogue silently understood true comrades encircled him as drunken adventurers celebrated joyfully. Rogue valued joyful company as he considered if adventurers finally became genuine trusted friends. He spotted unfamiliar visitors abruptly entering festivities as comrades observed mysterious arrivals. Michaela emerged presented personally anxiously, describing Rogue's companions rescued her previously from dangerous underground. She knelt respectfully before Rogue as genuinely seeking permission joining his gathering. Michaela described admiring Rogue's kindness strongly as desiring helping defenseless others using personal strength courageously. Rogue kindly agreed Michaela's seek as softly comforting anxious emotions. He described reliable comrades guarded each other as greeting Michaela comfortably into cheerful celebrations together. Michaela sadly appreciated Rogue genuinely as expressing surprise receiving acceptance and kindness swiftly. She gladly presented personally eagerly as Inez observed excited behavior beside confused Nidhogg. A guard neared the Lord as moonlight illuminated quiet castle walls beyond calmly. The Lord quietly reassured scared troops as investigating enigmatic teleportation failures surrounding Jalat's sudden disappearance. He assuredly dismissed growing concerns, claiming sealed transit rings merely represented temporary political tests internally. Meanwhile, Rogue comforted Michaela softly, hiding perilous suspicions beyond grinning smiles while complicated conspiracies emerged. Rogue grew within orphanage walls, receiving prohibited necromancer powers regardless lacking birthplace. Undead monsters trailed grinning Rogue constantly, driving solitary isolation throughout childhood among frightened surrounding villagers. Rogue wanted true bonds strongly, watching joyful children together while remaining separated emotionally from everybody. Devils ruined Rogue's orphanage abruptly, abandoning him roaming abandoned wilderness carrying painful memories alone. Rogue went into Sardia domain commanding undead troops, pursuing bonds as surviving dangerous solitary necromancer responsibilities. Rogue formally grew explorer alongside Inez, Nidhogg, and helpful appraiser Kalfa during sunrise ceremonies. Michaela eagerly greeted Rogue's appearance within busy inn, happily joining his adventurous traveling party. Rogue uneasily agreed Michaela's praise, valuing company while discussing loneliness beside cheerful morning conversations. Kalfa and Nidhogg warily evaluated Michaela's concealed recovery powers as observing doubtful behavior nearby. Inez commended youthful Rogue confidently, as Nidhogg harshly condemned Michaela's uncertain recovery capabilities openly. Michaela spotted scars covering Nidhogg's wings, offering recovery support assuredly alongside curious Rogue. Triggered recovery sorcery cautiously, Michaela repairing Nidhogg's ancient conflict scars completely within moments. Nidhogg expressed true surprise as Michaela confidently described lifelong recovery training from childhood experiences. Michaela described remote birthplace routes silently, skipping detailed explanations regarding isolated elven territories suspiciously. Inez understood Michaela's birthplace vanished entirely, understanding her hurtful loneliness and wandering isolation alone. Rogue heard cautiously as Michaela described solitary travels throughout villages before reaching Sardia Empire. Nidhogg detected no malicious intentions from Michaela, eventually trusting her gentle recovery powers entirely. Kalfa admitted Michaela's remarkable recovery skills as Rogue reacted awkwardly toward embarrassing compliments humorously. Rogue greeted Michaela kindly as ally explorer, supportive friendship, while Kalfa approved supportive partnership. Michaela thankfully agreed Rogue's kindness before gladly exploring Empire streets beside flying Nidhogg. Inez challenged Rogue softly about bonds as Ascalon figures departed peacefully following cheerful celebrations together. Rogue confessed tremendous joy eagerly valuing companionship experiences never encountered throughout previous lonely childhood circumstances. Rogue recalled association figures greeting him kindly celebrating together beside Ligurdo and Gran enthusiastically. Kalfa grinned confidently alongside Rogue as doubtful strangers observed their peaceful conversations silently. Unidentified person neared Rogue and Inez warily, questioning their goal. Gold confronted Rogue fiercely alongside doubtful comrades, seeking adventurer status information. Rogue misread threatening blackmail entirely, reacting eagerly as believing experienced adventurers acknowledged him. He confidently presented beginner status obediently, unclear Gold across joyful praise towards senior adventurers. Gold ridiculed Rogue's novice level harshly, seeking excessive payment alongside intimidating companions threateningly. Rogue expressed regret genuinely about poverty as Kalfa silently prepared responding against foolish threatening adventurers. Inez gave leftover money calmly as Rogue attempted resolving dangerous confrontation. Rogue trailed veteran explorer customs genuinely as Kalfa observed threatening behavior angrily. Gold demanded Kalfa harshly, creating Rogue's joyful attitude promptly disappear underneath rising anger. Rogue launched forward, striking brutally before extortionists comprehended his tremendous physical capabilities. Rogue condemned disrespectful behavior coldly, guarding loyal comrades as horrifying hostile explorers through overwhelming intimidation. Rogue overcame Gold swiftly, abandoning scared comrades panicking alongside unconscious leader. Hostile explorer tried devastation sorcery angrily as Rogue protected Kalfa from dangerous incoming attacks. Rogue promptly neutralized hostile spells entirely startling assailants through overwhelming cancellation magic abilities. Rogue respectfully left leftover bronze money beyond, apologizing genuinely towards defeated unconscious adventurer leader. He overcame veteran courteously as Kalfa admired his strength and compassionate personality. Overcame explorers swore revenge opposing Rogue as cautioned Inez could slaughter everybody. Michaela responded eagerly alongside floating Nidhogg, recognizing Rogue's horrifying reputation among perilous surrounding adventurers immediately. Ligurdo came back weary beside drunken Ascalon figures, fighting recovering from overwhelming celebration activities. Michaela hurriedly treated wounded explorers cautiously as puzzled guild members observed impressive healing magic. Ligurdo celebrated eagerly after Michaela entirely removed alcohol damage across extraordinary recovery powers. Michaela cured severe hangovers entirely as Ligurdo and Gran challenged enigmatic joyful healer. Rogue welcomed comrades energetically as Inez complained angrily about unpleasant association smells. Rogue presented enthusiastic Michaela confidently, describing her openly as his private student before seniors. Michaela welcomed Ligurdo and Gran courteously as Rogue explained their true instructor responsibilities. Ligurdo guided Rogue towards reception desk as weary receptionist admitted his beginner explorer status. Rogue received beginner seek forms as comrades witnessed silently beside exhausted guild receptionist. Ligurdo recommended simple slime elimination missions eagerly as Rogue examined official seek documentation. Rogue announced resolute goals confidently, vowing hard-working efforts beside encouraging Ligurdo and Gran. Association figures cheered energetically as receptionists stayed weary, watching motivated adventurers leave headquarters together. Receptionists found perilous worm warnings attached abruptly. Understanding Rogue accepted extremely hazardous beginner mission unknowingly. Receptionists reassured personally anxiously, thinking sleeping worms stayed harmless without reckless large-scale magical disturbances. Rogue, Michaela, Inez, and Nidhogg left brightly unknowingly advancing perilous worms through carefree confidence together inside forests. Ahead, Michaela demonstrated fire-opposing slimes as Rogue witnessed Goroforest's perilous environment. Cautiously, Rogue agreed his first elimination seek, journeying farther across forests searching slimes beside companions. Gran and Ligurdo supervised Michaela cautiously as Rogue appreciated his new teammates' recovery powers. Ligurdo described multiplying slime's forest behavior as sweating heavily underneath tremendous summer temperatures. Rogue reluctantly detached from comrades, grinning anxiously as continuing adventures independently across unfamiliar regions. Inez and Nidhogg avoided sunlight exhaustion as guarding Rogue's undead military alongside swamplands. Michaela expressed regret sadly since her offensive sorcery stayed ineffective opposing slimes surrounding nearby adventurers. Michaela sadly confessed insecurities as Rogue reassured her powers stayed valuable amid dangerous missions. Rogue reassured Michaela genuinely, describing talented explorers seldom mastered offensive and defensive abilities simultaneously. Michaela thankfully promised improvement as Gran and Ligurdo uneasily witnessed Rogue's supportive leadership. Rogue described conflict circles, assigning Michaela rear support as Inez guarded dangerous front lines. Michaela understood foes targeted defenseless supporters first, creating advantages whenever protective healers vanished. Rogue commended Michaela's correct reasoning, reminding healers protective priorities counted before careless battleground attacks occurred. Michaela eagerly agreed Rogue's suggestion, readying future missions requiring stronger protective mystical abilities training. Ligurdo and Gran supported Rogue's proposal, recommending perilous golem elimination missions strengthening protective fighting experience. Rogue entrusted Gran temporarily readying separate training activities as comrades witnessed uncertainly. He borrowed Ligurdo's sword, surprising comrades regardless, claiming ordinary arms stayed entirely sufficient. Rogue triggered Worm Affinity Enchant, strengthening borrowed blades. As nearby slimes assembled nearby curiously together, he unleashed Dragonica Might, slicing advancing slimes apart, employing enchanted sword techniques effortlessly. Rogue grinned assuredly as overcame slimes vanished, completely, allowing exhausted adventurers returning safely towards civilization. Michaela praised Rogue's tremendous powers as Ligurdo and Gran quietly acknowledged extraordinary magical combat. Ligurdo eagerly challenged Rogue's enchantment powers, becoming astonished discovering mighty sorcery. Ligurdo frantically requested training from Rogue, hoping sword enchantments improved his future expedition fighting powers. Rogue uneasily agreed their enthusiasm as comrades assembled happily across quiet forest surroundings. Rogue triggered a looter compound sorcery, combining fire and wind elements into ruinous swirling assaults. Rogue abruptly cancelled ruinous sorcery assaults, sensing unfamiliar disturbances advancing nearby forest battlefields. Abruptly named Gold emerged alongside hooded supporters, facing Rogue cheerfully inside dangerous forests. He ridiculed Rogue playfully, as attacking, driving close by comrades reacting cautiously against unexpected confrontations. Gold confidently presented mighty allies assembled from Empire's citizens, displaying overwhelming confidence before Rogue's companions. Realized promised arrangements brutally, Gold capturing Rogue openly as nearby foes celebrated successful ambush operations. Ligurdo and Gran abruptly spotted gigantic shadows descending swiftly throughout nearby battlefield. The gathering stared upward anxiously, stunned by horrifying monsters appearing across forest skies. Hooded supporters faltered promptly after witnessing colossal red and white worms roaring violently. The gigantic worms assaulted rashly, crushing foes brutally while terrified hooded followers screamed desperately. Remaining supporters hurriedly mentioned Void, creating Rogue and Ligurdo questioning enigmatic perilous individuals. Hooded supporters assuredly ready defeating gigantic worms, gathering dangerous magical energy. Together, Gold frantically begged worms delaying assaults temporarily as complicated mystical formations surrounded frightened followers. Ligurdo understood foes concentrated tremendous mystical might simultaneously, astonishing Rogue and nearby companions greatly. Michaela concerned anxiously as Rogue recognized foes employing extremely dangerous magical methods against dragons. Ignoring comrades' warnings, Rogue quietly neared battlegrounds solitary preparing confronting enormous dragons. Rogue entrusted Michaela's safety towards Gran as horrifying screams echoed throughout disordered battlefields. Hooded supporters triggered mighty party sorcery, summoning enormous enchanted hammers targeting aggressive dragons. Colossal mystical hammers hit charging worms brutally, forcing airborne creatures roaring painfully during attacks. One worm suffered ruinous impacts straightforwardly, crashing downward as mystical explosions shattered nearby surroundings. Barrier sorcery abruptly guarded remaining supporters, blocking dragons' attacks while enemies panicked desperately. Enraged worms shattered mystical barriers instantly, horrifying hooded supporters defending themselves frantically. Supporters faltered loudly after worms ruined barrier sorcery completely, using devastating physical strength effortlessly. Horrified supporters understood gigantic worms possessed SS-ranked power, greatly exceeding their dangerous magical expectations. Wary supporters lost leftover mana reserves as worms continued attacking relentlessly across chaotic battlefields. Rogue confronted attacking worms quietly, criticizing careless behavior as readying ending dangerous conflicts. Rogue confronted the worm, warning reckless provocations threatened nearby travelers and close-by settlements. Mass criminals faltered promptly as Rogue demanded returning kidnapped residents. Before continuing mystical confrontations, Rogue unleashed Wormstrike sorcery assuredly, remembering Nidhogg's teachings amid perilous battlefield encounter. The colossal worm dropped furiously, releasing Yggdraverse assaults throughout forests while enemies scattered desperately. The colossal worm roared brutally overhead, horrifying fleeing foes throughout destroyed wilderness areas beneath. The colossal worm witnessed quietly as mysterious magic spheres surrounded frightened enemies. The colossal worm smashed gigantic projectiles, startling close-by enemies witnessing overwhelming destructive physical strength. Withdrawing criminals faltered frantically after witnessing horrifying fire, surpassing previous attacks across surrounding battlefields. Rogue observed fleeing foes, assuring horrified opponents escape distances stayed entirely meaningless against overwhelming power. He triggered Devastation Sorcery Black Hole, instantly swallowing incoming assaults across devastating gravitational magical force. Rogue quietly governed enigmatic black spheres floating before close-by foes dangerously. He redirected compressed energy, readying further ruinous mystical strike opposing approaching hostile opponents. Rogue dodged gigantic assaults smoothly as the colossal worm continued charging destructive flames. Rogue expressed regret softly before instructing weary worms peacefully hibernate until spring arrived across distant mountains. Gold shouted helplessly as gigantic worm jaws launched him brutally across collapsing forest surroundings below. Gran, Ligurdo, and Michaela observed quietly as colossal worms crashed heavily. Rogue witnessed departing foes cautiously as puzzled survivors discussed mysterious Void's frightening authority. Michaela announced Gold escaping swiftly as Rogue resolved rescuing weary dragon remained priority immediately. Rogue described sleeping worms survived securely, deciding returning disturbed monsters towards original nest personally. Michaela healed injured worms cautiously, thinking awakened monsters suffered lingering pain across injured bodies. Ligurdo commended Michaela kindly as Rogue activating dimensional space sorcery. Transporting worms, Rogue gladly described dimensional transit approaches as Michaela and Ligurdo admired impressive magical abilities nearby. Gran described elves' guarded recovery traditions historically, exchanging forests for valuable recovery potion production nationwide. Gran described Luciella Sardia's contributions, describing reduced explorer deaths across accessible recovery elixirs throughout nationwide. Rogue discussed fallen ruler NAD silently,
before returning worms, until strangers abruptly halted nearby conversations. Lagurdo and Gran discussed Rogue, understanding he overcame perilous SS-level worms completely alone. A waiter greeted Rogue's gathering kindly within Ascalon's Explorer Guild headquarters. The gathering described remaining challenging conflicts while receptionists listened carefully. Rogue submitted completed assignment reports uneasily describing troublesome slime encounters amid perilous forest investigations recently. The flustered receptionist expressed regret continually towards Rogue genuinely, regretting misunderstandings surrounding. The receptionist expressed regret sadly as Rogue and Gran reassured her about earlier misunderstandings. Closeby explorers learning Rogue overcame 2 horrifying SS-level dragons during missions. Crowded explorers encircled Rogue, seeking explanations about enigmatic SSS-Rank achievements and dangerous battles. Kalfa abruptly emerged within busy headquarters, startling Rogue while confused adventurers observed. She neared Rogue seeking private discussions as nearby explorers watched curiously. Kalfa invited Rogue towards the cathedral privately as puzzled comrades witnessed unexpected discussions. She described somebody crucial expected talks there, inviting Michaela alongside Rogue politely. Rogue described cathedral purposes uneasily as searching curiously for lost Inez and Nidhogg. Kalfa challenged Rogue's undead military roots cautiously as hearing explanations regarding destroyed skeletal forces. Rogue explained unfortunate conditions honestly, describing uncontrolled necromancy unexpectedly caused unwilling undead followers. Rogue recalled demon invasions sadly, describing solitary necromancy pursuits originated from hurtful orphanage survival experiences. Kalfa heard cautiously as Rogue described maintaining temporary peace regardless widespread hostility and suffering. Rogue grinned genuinely, thinking peaceful tomorrows demanded stopping endless growth among undead armies. Kalfa comforted Rogue, describing the Sardia domain carried on recovering regardless ruinous wartime hardships. She guided Rogue within cathedral halls, presenting influential individuals assisting future empire advancements and stability. Rogue, Kalfa, and Michaela went into gigantic cathedral halls silently as armored guards monitored remote corridors. Michaela gasped eagerly alongside Rogue, astonished by gigantic architecture nearby heavily guarded royal chambers. Kalfa described Maiden Luciella seldom emerged, assuming duties following Emperor Nad's sudden departure recently from duties. Kalfa respectfully presented Rogue and Michaela before kneeling towards awaiting Empire royalty within cathedral chambers. Luciella challenged Rogue cautiously as Michaela witnessed anxiously beside Kalfa throughout silent cathedral audiences. Rogue and Michaela responded startlingly after discovering Sardia's honored regal maiden. Luciella Sardia was an elf. Maiden Luciella Sardia welcomed Rogue's comrades kindly, seeking cooperation between elves and explorers peacefully. Kalfa confirmed Luciella dropped straightforwardly from ruler Nod, surprising Rogue and close-by comrades considerably. Michaela defended Kalfa respectfully, rejecting ruler Nad entirely regardless, enjoying familial connections across bloodlines. Kalfa described ruler Nad's foolish leadership gradually worsened political battles across neighboring lands severely. Luciella disclosed ruler Nad abused numerous elven females, causing tragic births including Michaela herself. Luciella described tainted elves disappearing secretly as ruler Nad carried on exploiting defenseless women. Kalfa understood ruler Nad concealed ruined villages, abandoning wounded elves lacking proper healing support. Michaela concluded terrible crimes occurred below ground since remote villagers lacked communication with nearby societies. Luciella knelt genuinely before Rogue's comrades, apologizing openly for ruler Nad's unforgivable actions committed. Michaela promptly comforted Luciella softly, claiming blameless descendants never deserve responsibility about historical atrocities themselves. Michaela described blended lineages generally cause difficulties because elves and humans rarely reproduced. Kalfa commended Luciella's unusual skills as Michaela embarrassedly denied possessing extraordinary mystical powers. Rogue heard as Michaela described astrology as uncommon knowledge comprehended by very limited specialists. Globally, the maiden demonstrated astrology employing mystical cards predicting nationwide events across movements observed among distant stars. Luciella cautioned Rogue's comrades doubtful celestial actions indicated perilous incidents approaching surrounding territories very soon. Rogue recognized Maiden Luciella promptly as Kalfa and comrades responded cautiously beside him silently. Enigmatic transportation sorcery encircled Luciella gracefully as unfamiliar energy distorted nearby surroundings unexpectedly violently. Maiden Luciella, Rogue, Kalfa, and Michaela cautiously witnessed Luciella advancing their location calmly together cautiously. Void abruptly emerged before everybody,
carrying confident smiles as confronting Luciella's suspicious teleportation methods. Kalfa challenged Void sternly as Empire representatives discussed unauthorized mystical rings inside territories. Seriously, Maiden Luciella expressed regret respectfully towards Void as Kalfa angrily denied unreasonable political accusations. Luciella described Balra domain requested support since perilous monsters previously attacked battlefield positions. Rogue presented comrades confidently as Michaela eagerly realized Void previously fought alongside legendary heroes together. Kalfa demanded explanations fiercely as Void casually discussed magician Jelat Farlu's doubtful activities. Recalled the official expressed regret genuinely, admitting independent deeds caused needless trouble surrounding Rogue's companions. Kalfa denied Void's control strongly, claiming Empire jurisdiction controlled every investigation involving outsiders. Luciella challenged Void cautiously as Void expected additional matters demanded discussion between influential representatives. Rogue received surprising recommendations, becoming an SSS-level explorer across International Association Federation approval. Kalfa responded loudly alongside stunned Michaela, fighting understanding Rogue's sudden promotion announcement entirely immediately. Void proposed Rogue becoming Wormslayer as Luciella challenged rapid decisions concerning perilous dragon subjugations. Void disclosed perilous rumors describing reanimated Demon King troops gathering devils. Kalfa described Northwestern devils possessed tremendous power, stopping nations from confronting their expanding military forces. Void requested Rogue finish challenging SSS-level qualification tests before humanity faced another devastating demonic conflict. Rogue agreed, thinking successful achievements could support comrades regardless complicated duties involving Inez. Void left calmly after vowing trial documents, wishing Rogue success before activating transportation magic circles. Transportation sorcery abruptly triggered brutally, startling Rogue while companions watched dangerous magical disturbances. Luciella calmed Kalfa down, as Kalfa cautioned Rogue of Void, describing Void's state extremely perilous. Void Merker's brutal history amid humanity's demon war scared Rogue's comrades, significantly alongside battleground remains. Luciella examined enigmatic cards anxiously as Kalfa feared consequences concerning Pyro and perilous demons. Michaela courteously neared Maiden Luciella, seeking private discussions about unfolding conflicts affecting companions. Michaela eagerly requested stories about foreign cultures as Luciella greeted discussion eagerly. Kalfa comprehended Michaela's presence, assisted Luciella relax comfortably as Rogue supported. Rogue entrusted Michaela cautiously before returning towards comrades waiting elsewhere across close-by city districts. He found explorers handling pressing creature elimination requests after dangerous creatures suddenly appeared. Rogue declined joining missions promptly, thinking Gran and comrades already managed perilous events successfully nearby. Rogue traveled solitary towards remote wetlands as moonlight illuminated deserted paths. Inez and Nidhogg greeted Rogue after his return alongside assembled undead troops awaiting commands. Rogue described Michaela state accompanying Maiden Luciella as discussing complicated political relationships. Inez anxiously expressed regret before seeking Finnish army strength details regarding Rogue's expanding undead army. Rogue's colossal undead troops included multitudes of skeleton warriors, undead, Nidhogg, and Inez stationed. Nidhogg announced mighty mystical energy advancing northern lands while Rogue listened. Rogue recalled Void's warnings suspecting northern creatures assembled troops before launching perilous invasions. Inez congratulated Rogue eagerly after learning recommendations about challenging SSS-level adventurer certification examinations. Rogue discussed northern creature appearances as Inez concerned concealed issues threatened surrounding countries. Inez advised Rogue skipping Empire battles entirely, thinking perilous political complications would worsen. Nidhogg reassured Rogue assisting Kalfa's birthplace, as undead armies assembled beneath moonlit wilderness. Rogue uneasily confessed northern creatures assembled somewhat, because Inez's overwhelming magical presence attracted dangerous creatures. Inez understanding trustworthy bonds existed regardless brutal hardships throughout Imperial territories previously. Rogue eventually comprehended comrades guarded others selflessly, risking themselves lacking hesitation amid dangerous hardships. He announced passionately his determination guarding precious allies opposing advancing enemies threatening everyone. Rogue contemplated assisting Kalfa's birthplace as Nidhogg willingly promised absolute devotion beside silent undead forces. Inez angrily denied joining perilous battles, declaring private refusal regardless Rogue's determined efforts protecting companions everywhere from enemies. Rogue neared quietly as Inez denied the seek, creating confusion. Rogue challenged Inez cautiously as Nidhogg witnessed anxiously, shocked completely by her unexpected refusal. He understood stubborn Inez behaved differently recently, abandoning obedient attitudes lacking describing private motivations. Inez confessed discomfort within foreign territory, skipping specific explanations as Rogue heard anxiously nearby. She announced steadfast devotion towards Rogue, revealing offerings supporting his deepest ambitions and desires. Inez angrily denied her birthplace, declaring steadfast devotion towards Rogue above everybody else. She confessed joy assisting Rogue's bonds as Rogue challenged her sudden emotional determination. Inez hesitated briefly as Nidhogg witnessed quietly, sensing unresolved emotions concealed beneath determined expressions. Nidhogg ridiculed Inez playfully alongside puzzled Rogue, exposing awkward worries about abandonment and loneliness. Inez grew silent promptly after Nidhogg disclosed insecurities nearby, Rogue discovering companionship beyond loyal servants. Moonlight illuminated quiet surroundings as Inez stood before Nidhogg. Separating personally, Inez hugged trembling knees silently as Nidhogg observed cautiously, recognizing tremendous loneliness consuming her. She agreed Rogue's growing bonds mentally, thinking their connection would survive each future hardship. Grinned sadly, Inez trusting Rogue's carried-on life would preserve bonds connecting everybody together. Rogue expressed regret softly towards flustered Inez, comforting her cautiously while Nidhogg observed nearby silently. Rogue acknowledging selfish behavior as nearby troops witnessed silently. Nearby, he disclosed hurtful experiences hiding Necromancer identity, describing lifelong rejection from fearful nearby communities. Rogue commended Inez, recalling army expansion and crucial discoveries found through her contributions together. Inez confessed reviving Nidhogg secretly since Rogue continuously handled tremendous burdens lacking proper support alone. Nidhogg complained uneasily as Inez denied support promptly, embarrassing Rogue before nearby companions. Later, Rogue, Inez, and Nidhogg laughed jointly calmly, eventually settling hurtful misunderstandings. Rogue thought strongly upon denying Necromancer identity, understanding comrades always supported his challenging. He eagerly proposed expedition jointly again as Inez and Nidhogg agreed his renewed determination. Rogue expressed regret before assembled comrades, regretting selfish dreams affecting loyal supporters mentally throughout hardships. Inez thankfully clasped Rogue's palm, celebrating realized wishes alongside undead companions, sharing renewed peaceful existence together. Inez sadly requested memory from Rogue, vowing steadfast joy. Rogue embraced weeping Inez softly as Nidhogg witnessed quietly, understanding everyone's loneliness. A person abruptly called Rogue Master, startling him entirely as companions watched nearby. Michaela unexpectedly saw a moving reunion, weeping openly after hearing everyone's heartfelt feelings and struggles together. Rogue presented harmless undead comrades brightly, reassuring scared Michaela alongside laughing gathered soldiers. Michaela praised Rogue's undead comrades eagerly, praising remarkable armor as calling everyone amazing. Rogue and Inez laughed alongside Nidhogg gladly, valuing Michaela's fearless curiosity. Rogue announced determination strongly, vowing comrades' advancement jointly while refusing hesitation regarding dangerous future ambitions. He vowed saving persecuted nations confidently, supportive Inez as vowing acceptance towards misunderstood people everywhere together. Inez agreed Rogue's conviction quietly, thinking their shared journey marked valuable beginnings for everybody ahead. Rogue confidently presented undead comrades resolute towards changing worldwide opinions regarding necromancers. Closeby residents raised arms, assisting Rogue's declaration as cheering loudly beneath moonlit surroundings together. Rogue's weary comrades went into Saldia Empire's capital readying maintenance while sunrise approached. He found collapsed residents nearby crowded streets, promptly understanding dangerous trouble affected Ascalon. Kalfa hastily organized emergency treatment work as seeking support from shocked nearby adventurers immediately. Michaela guided wounded residents hastily towards treatment facilities as overwhelmed healers continued working tirelessly. Rogue found injured Gran and Ligurdo, promptly rushing anxiously towards both weary warriors. Gran described ruinous conflicts briefly as Rogue heard carefully. Relieved surviving companions regained consciousness. Kalfa disclosed enigmatic D-level creatures used sorcery, causing severe injuries among overwhelmed healer guild members. Rogue learned hostile assaults eliminated 12 rescue teams, threatening collapse across entire protective missions. Kalfa disclosed Luciella's hidden coronation ceremony abruptly grew targeted, alarming Rogue, abruptly maiden. Luciella blamed personally sadly, thinking unexpected disaster occurred because personal requests. Kalfa comforted Luciella softly as Rogue understood doubtful coordinated assaults appeared without warning everywhere. Kalfa suspected transportation sorcery as stunned comrades questioned impossible transportation methods involving numerous monsters. Inez described transportation theory quietly, claiming ordinary mankind lacked capabilities performing advanced magical transportation. A transportation sorcery demanded gigantic mystical control, making transportation methods extremely difficult for humans. Kalfa understood foes abused transportation strategically, allowing tremendous ambushes against unsuspecting Ascalon adventurers repeatedly nearby. Rogue connected enigmatic assaults promptly, deciding aerial inquiry gave fastest opportunities discovering hidden enemies' locations. Inez brought Rogue across skies cautiously as he expressed regret nervously during rapid nighttime flight together. Rogue suspected Void Merker orchestrated assaults secretly as Inez supported aerial reconnaissance missions close by quietly. Rogue found anti-transportation geometry abruptly, understanding hostile magicians escaped shortly before his aerial investigation arrived silently. Inez saw gigantic mystical rings nearby Saldia Empire, confirming catastrophic danger threatened countless civilians simultaneously nearby from afar. Rogue found gigantic transportation rings as investigating vanished adventurers alongside flying. Nidhogg witnessed doubtful emblems as Rogue identified anti-transportation geometry disrupting mystical transportation networks. Inez connected enigmatic rings with earlier creature invasions nearby Ascalon's devastated territories and disappearances. Rogue described numerous magicians collectively powered gigantic rings, astonishing Inez across horrifying strategic possibilities. He concluded Balra Domain orchestrated ruinous missions targeting Saldia Domain employing massive teleportation circles. Rogue predicted imminent war, describing transportation rings faltering rapidly following massive Imperial casualties everywhere. Inez challenged Rogue's intentions quietly as flying alongside collapsing mystical pathways across distant battlefields. Rogue recalled cherished comrades suffering injuries, understanding moving restraint grew impossible during escalating conflicts. Kalfa witnessed injured explorers recovering gradually as exhausted survivors rested throughout crowded medical chambers. Rogue ordered Inez and Nidhogg fiercely, readying decisive retaliation opposing foes threatening Imperial stability. Inez agreed Rogue's command promptly soaring throughout remote landscapes as preparing future. Gran and Ligurdo recovered calmly within crowded headquarters as wounded explorers rested. Kalfa welcomed Rogue's returning party kindly, relieved tensions nearby Ascalon's unstable conditions gradually faltering. She described cathedral healers supported overpowered clinics, as Rogue discussed doubtful activity appearing overhead recently. Rogue cautioned Kalfa further invasion neared soon, connecting Balra Domain actions with dangerous escalating conflicts. Kalfa described Balra Domain lacked resources, motivating territorial invasions opposing neighboring countries nearby empire borders. Kalfa identified Chief Chancellor Void Merker, describing perilous goals concealed behind calculated political. She recalled Void Merker's ruthless wartime philosophy, exposing obsession towards power as sacrificing blameless hostages. Rogue contemplated Void greedily manipulated mystical technology, prioritizing private dominance above Empire's citizens. Rogue feared inevitable international battles emerging since Void governed tremendous Empire influence and military. Rogue resolved stopping Void Merker himself, recognizing immediate intervention stayed necessary stopping catastrophic Empire devastation. Kalfa announced guarding Luciella Sardia and blameless residents stayed her highest unwavering responsibility throughout conflicts. Rogue praised Kalfa's devotion, understanding Luciella genuinely inspired hope among fighting Empire residents. Kalfa disclosed Luciella endured isolation childhood hardships, yet carried on transforming nations across compassionate guidance. She thought Luciella ultimately would restore prosperity, motivating everybody assisting Saldia Empire's uncertain future. Kalfa strengthened her determination, vowing carried on resistance regardless tremendous threats nearby Saldia Empire persistently. Rogue described 5 transportation rings encircled Saldia Domain, enabling rapid enemy military deployments. Kalfa concerned defending colossal land stayed unlikely because Void Merker's unpredictable movements complicated preparations. Gran and Ligurdo offering additional manpower assisting Kalfa's fighting protective missions against invasions. Ligurdo announced guarding blameless residents counted, refusing passive silence during escalating national emergencies. Gran reassured weary explorers, thinking combined mystical strength could repel approaching Imperial enemies. Kalfa agreed explorers' support thankfully as citizens apologized sincerely regarding Ascalon's weakened current circumstances. Kalfa regretted earlier missions failed, thinking veteran explorers might have reduced devastating casualties significantly. Ligurdo and Gran pledged steadfast cooperation promptly, assisting Kalfa's preparations opposing advancing military threats together. Kalfa ordered Kalam gathering Empire troops swiftly as explorers anticipated decisive battles approaching Saldia Empire soon. Rogue disclosed Void recommended attending perilous SSS-level promotion tests scheduled amid imminent attacks. Ligurdo and Gran promptly suspected concealed traps, questioning Rogue's careless participation amid wartime preparations. Inez described Balra domain intended distracting Rogue deliberately, stopping interference opposing transportation circle operations. Kalfa assuredly stated Rogue possessed sufficient power destroying Balra Empire's colossal mystical transit circles. She outlined hostile strategies cautiously, describing Rogue must attend tests after Balra Empire's expectations. Kalfa organized coordinated strategies, planning Void's capture as Rogue ruined perilous transportation rings completely. Rogue expressed regret anxiously as comrades readied difficult defensive missions delaying overwhelming Imperial enemy forces. Michaela completed treatment successfully, restoring wounded explorers mystical stability before advancing perilous confrontations. Rogue commended Michaela, seeking carried on medical support guarding injured civilians during upcoming conflicts. Kalfa concerned steep duties burdened Rogue heavily as comrades promised supporting Michaela throughout dangerous operations. Rogue agreed tremendous duties quietly as companions trusted his strength defending Saldia Empire. He uneasily confessed valuing everyone's bond strongly, strengthening determination guarding companions during conflicts ahead. Kalfa and others embraced Rogue gladly, surprising him across true acceptance and moving encouragement. Rogue anxiously understood comrades supported him genuinely regardless misunderstandings surrounding his heartfelt confession completely. Appreciated everybody silently, Rogue valuing reliable companions supporting him throughout dangerous Imperial struggles faithfully. Rogue distributed undying military summoning rings, readying comrades carefully before confronting dangerous Imperial enemies together. Kalfa commended Rogue, celebrating future victories and Saldia Empire's mythical first SSS-level explorer. Rogue grinned, anticipating successful reunions after perilous conflicts threatening Saldia Empire stability. Elsewhere, Void Merker examined Rogue secretly, confirming suspicions about transportation rings across hidden magical surveillance. Void ridiculed Kalfa's optimistic strategies assuredly, revealing horrifying dark sorcery manipulating living beings freely. Summoned worms assuredly, Void readying ruinous gifts intended tremendous Saldia Empire and Rogue Kusal completely. He denied mighty heroes entirely, thinking ruthless control solitary should guide weaker citizens permanently forward. Void initiated gigantic sacrificial sorcery rings, accepting casualties as beginning conflicts protecting cherished companions everywhere desperately. Kalfa described army deployments as Luciella heard quietly, understanding Western settlements faced dangers surrounding Gaja region's important capital gates already. She described Empire backup guarding southern lands, but Kalfa concerned constantly because Void's destination remained completely unknown everywhere across nations. Luciella examined her device hopelessly as admitting nationwide safety vanished swiftly, driving nobles toward desperate defensive preparations immediately against threats. She agreed responsibility for exposing Empire residents towards brutality, believing personal sacrifice remained necessary protecting frightened civilians everywhere from destruction. Kalfa comforted faltering Luciella alongside her bed, recognizing the elf maiden stayed central assisting their unstable country during crisis periods. Luciella softly entrusted Kalfa with future duties, creating Kalfa's concerned expression revealing terror toward losing the exhausted princess during conflict. Kalfa wept frantically before Luciella, refusing despairing words as asking whether the princess still desired anything meaningful anymore within life. Luciella silently disclosed wishes about visiting her deceased mother's birthplace, surprising Kalfa as exposing concealed loneliness carried constantly through years. She described ancient elven lands beyond Balra domain's supportive travel schemes regardless perilous circumstances, threatening surrounding territories everywhere with chaos. Kalfa promised accompanying Luciella towards her mother's hometown, supportive nationwide recovery as strengthening Luciella's fading determination across emotional support together. Luciella stared towards enigmatic visions appearing across her device, questioning if fate demanded guarding peace instead pursuing uncertain ambitions. Kalfa and Luciella grinned genuinely jointly, strengthening mutual trust as vowing surviving national turmoil beside each other, despite overwhelming circumstances. Empire troops halted their conversation abruptly, sharing massive magical disturbances approaching the capital and causing immediate concern throughout royal headquarters. Luciella identified Dallin region as hostile target, describing brave explorers stayed positioned there while Kalfa listened carefully beside strategic battlefield maps. Dreadfire ordered local defenses assuredly alongside armed explorers, readying forces rapidly before destructive attacks could overwhelm vulnerable settlements completely nearby. Sinan and Ligurdo complained anxiously about receiving perilous duties regardless, failing promotion tests and lacking confidence regarding upcoming assignments. Sinan described Dallin region guarded Gaja's capital indirectly, making explorer survival vital, maintaining army strength across imperial territories completely. Ligurdo joked carelessly alongside Sinan, driving flustered reactions as reminding him gigantic pressure rested upon their difficult imperial mission ahead. Countless creatures abruptly emerged before Empire soldiers, leaving Sinan shocked while Ligurdo laughed awkwardly about their terrible battlefield circumstances surrounding them. Closeby explorers ridiculed scared Empire soldiers openly, claiming experienced fighters naturally handled monsters regularly unlike nervous military recruits during dangerous encounters. Empire troops found gigantic goblin troops surrounding battlefields, becoming alarmed after witnessing gigantic monsters leading countless smaller goblins nearby together. Sinan described the creature represented a goblin lord, mythical creatures commanding entire nations of brutal goblins across overwhelming authority everywhere. Veteran troops explained goblin kings level beyond goblin lords, horrifying inexperienced recruits listening nervously beside battlefield preparations against approaching enemies. Sinan abandoned useless protests promptly as goblin armies progressed fiercely, forcing Imperial troops toward direct confrontation without opportunities, avoiding dangerous combat. Empire commanders challenged anxious troops courageously, seeking they prove themselves worthy before Kalfa and Master Log amid desperate battles ahead. Sinan reassured Ligurdo assuredly before conflict, deciding trusting comrades entirely remained better than surrendering toward fear and uncertainty surrounding missions. Ligurdo regained determination loudly, thinking Rogue could survive perilous events as troops nearby listened carefully toward hopeful encouragement from companions. Empire troops rushed fiercely opposing goblin forces together, proving humanity still possessed strength resisting overwhelming monsters invading vulnerable territories nearby. Rogue witnessed remote mountain ranges cautiously, sensing multiple mystical reactions gathering swiftly while preparing himself toward incoming dangerous confrontations ahead immediately. He connected odd hostile actions towards rumors nearby the resurrected progenitor Demon King, realizing larger disasters threatened entire regions beyond expectations. Rogue expressed regret towards Inez for exposing perilous details unexpectedly, while rumors regarding uncontrolled magical incidents spread rapidly everywhere already. Nidhogg analyzed hostile troops cautiously, identifying mighty creatures including Cerberus, trolls, poison dragons, and undead creatures gathering nearby together dangerously. Inez grew furious after learning foes impersonated Lucifer, and targeted Rogue straightforwardly, seeking ruthless punishment lacking hesitation against those responsible. Nidhogg denied mercy entirely, declaring absolute devotion towards his lord as threatening slaughter against anyone supporting false rulers and deception. Rogue understood monstrous invasions intimidated Saldia domain strategically, understanding somebody mighty needed stopping disasters before complete destruction overwhelmed. Rogue assembled Inez and Nidhogg assuredly instructing immediate action as readying themselves carefully against approaching monsters. Threatening regions. Inez triggered mighty Necromancer powers confidently, unleashing ruinous magical flames while Nidhogg experienced overwhelming strength surging throughout his transformed body. Nidhogg rushed skyward brutally as proclaiming Lucifer's true might, abandoning battlefield responsibilities toward Rogue and Inez during sudden aerial attacks. Inez observed Nidhogg's uncontrollable fire spread wildly throughout battlegrounds, recognizing his aggressive fighting style stayed dangerous, yet overwhelmingly effective everywhere. She witnessed horrified creatures fleeing mountain ranges frantically, understanding their combined magical pressure overwhelmed enemy forces before direct confrontation even began. Inez confronted hostile leaders bravely, mocking their bravery as recognizing devils connected towards enemies defeated years earlier by powerful forces. Encircled by gigantic Cerberus creatures, Inez stayed entirely calm while observing enemy movements carefully across dangerous mountain battlefields. Inez challenged why loyal Cerberus creatures obeyed false rulers, suspecting manipulation governed their perilous deeds against surrounding territories everywhere. Inez assaulted fiercely as declaring foes misread Lucifer completely, overwhelming gigantic Cerberus monsters through superior magical pressure and confidence alone. Inez ordered colossal creatures haughtily before conflict, forcing terrified Cerberus creatures toward submission beneath her overwhelming demonic authority and presence. Inez floated quietly above obedient Cerberus creatures, maintaining finished control as hostile creatures surrounded forests and mountainous battlefields nearby silently. She commended obedient creatures softly as noticing troublesome foes approaching rapidly from distant mountain regions toward dangerous confrontation areas unexpectedly nearby. Horrified survivors recognized Inez promptly, remembering monstrous massacres performed previously as panicking over her sudden appearance alongside advancing creatures everywhere. Scared foes tried escaping frantically, instructing monsters delaying Inez temporarily while fearing certain death approaching relentlessly behind them across battlefields. Inez confronted horrified survivors assuredly, quietly inquired if he was the Lucifer as destroying remaining doubts surrounding her overwhelming demonic identity completely forever. Inez confronted monstrous foes straightforwardly, criticizing attempts employing Lucifer's feared name carelessly, as pursuing deceptive schemes manipulating scared people. The demon warrior recognized Inez, remembering earlier encounters as anxiously understanding perilous conflicts surrounded mysterious organizations and powerful individuals. Survivors described Inez defeating monstrous gangs readily, describing only worthy beings deserved carrying Lucifer's mythical title among horrified witnesses. Devils faltered further after learning 7 wise men emerged suddenly, believing disastrous battles would spread uncontrollably throughout numerous territories across continents. Inez announced Lucifer should represent harmony between mankind and devils, instead encouraging hatred, violence, fear, and endless warfare between civilizations. Inez challenged quietly why Lucifer's feared name carried on spreading throughout, becoming associated with perilous conflicts and suspicious organizations recently worldwide. She detected horrifying presence advancing from remote mountains, causing nearby demons becoming frightened despite observing movements carefully from elevated skies. The demon warrior resolved withdrawing temporarily stayed safer, admitting facing Inez solitary would certainly end disastrously against overwhelming strength immediately. Inez stopped the escaping demon, seeking explanations about prohibited schemes deceiving residents across Lucifer's notorious reputation across surrounding territories. She cautioned perilous individuals often become uncontrollable swiftly, comparing careless troublemakers towards spreading fires destroying everything around them eventually, beyond containment. Furious devils assaulted Inez simultaneously instructing brutal retaliation as nearby enemies attempted overwhelming her through coordinated violent magical assaults. Inez triggered ruinous devastation sorcery, creating colossal black hole attacks capable crushing enemies instantly through terrifying supernatural power. The remaining demon recognized prohibited Demon King sorcery, becoming puzzled why Inez possessed powers reserved exclusively for legendary rulers alone. Inez ridiculed the demon's slow understanding, maintaining finished confidence as observing horrified reactions caused across overwhelming magical superiority displayed. She presented personally officially as Lucifer, loyal servant towards Necromancer rogue Quizel, revealing her true identity confidently before frightened demons. Agurata doubted Inez entirely, refusing thinking Lucifer's servant would assault demon kings as nearby demons watched nervously. Agurata triggered Mighty Phoenix enchantment sorcery promptly, covering personally with blazing flames, while preparing direct combat against Inez aggressively. Inez identified Agurata's Phoenix bloodline quietly, exposing his true identity as observing careless confidence displayed before perilous confrontations started completely. Agurata announced goals conquering Saldia domain confidently, intending becoming the next demon king across overwhelming strength and destructive warfare eventually. Inez responded gracefully employing ruinous sorcery called Fallen Arrow Lucifer, officially greeting Demon King Agurata before launching ruinous attacks. Inez overcame Agurata effortlessly before bidding farewell quietly, abandoning the injured Demon King entirely overwhelmed by her terrifying supernatural abilities. Inez condemned Agurata's invasion schemes harshly, declaring Rogue's peaceful birthplace deserved protection from ruinous goals threatening blameless civilians. Inez resolved searching nearby mountains stayed necessary first, thinking concealed enemies still operated secretly across dangerous territories near Rogue. Rogue explored close-by forests cautiously, discovering doubtful creature activity as remaining alert toward unusual movements hidden among wilderness surrounding him. Rogue encountered 3 gigantic trolls abruptly, readying personally promptly while analyzing dangerous opponents blocking his path through mountainous terrain ahead. Rogue examined gigantic trolls eagerly, thinking mighty creatures would strengthen his growing immortal army greatly through necromancy and resurrection abilities. Colossal trolls assaulted Rogue brutally, smashing nearby ground continually while attempting crushing the young necromancer through overwhelming physical strength. Rogue readied necromancy spells quietly, mentioning prolonged usage concerning human bodies, rather of controlling actual monsters recently during previous battles. He triggered Necromancer's resurrection successfully,
summoning countless skeletal fighters swiftly as surrounding undead forces emerged from scattered remains. Use Necromancer's pledge cautiously, Rogue warning resurrected trolls opposing careless fighting since weakened durability affected their restored undead bodies permanently. Rogue reassured Empire troops assuredly as enormous goblin monsters attacked violently, ordering everyone unleash magical power without hesitation. Sudden skeletal fighters crashed throughout battlegrounds abruptly, colliding straightforwardly against giant goblins while protecting frightened Imperial troops from destruction. Explosive impacts scattered bones and debris throughout, driving nearby troops retreat briefly as undead fighters continued resisting goblin assaults fiercely. Gigantic goblins rushed rashly across collapsing terrain continually, creating destruction continuously while hidden observers analyzed their aggressive movements from safety. The enraged goblin commander roared furiously throughout battlegrounds, gathering close-by creatures jointly before launching another devastating attack against humanity forces. Glowing lights encircled charging goblin armies abruptly, unclear gigantic commanders as concealed undead forces prepared coordinated counterattacks across battlefields fiercely. Undead fighters pierced the giant goblin continually before Rogue appreciated his summoned troops quietly for protecting exhausted Imperial troops. Rogue gave the merciless goblin commander further opportunity, joining his growing undead military rather continuing meaningless devastation against humanity. Rogue triggered prohibited necromancy promptly, unleashing resurrection sorcery straightforwardly upon the gigantic goblin while nearby soldiers watched speechlessly together. The resurrected goblin creature awakened under Rogue's control entirely, startling nearby troops, while undead troops accepted their new companion. Rogue agreed the resurrected goblin obediently as readying additional undead summons, thinking stronger troops remained necessary surviving prolonged warfare ahead. He preserved gigantic goblin bodies cautiously, intending returning home securely since Shin waited anxiously within the domain for him. Rogue grinned assuredly as planning bringing souvenirs home later, revealing calm determination regardless continuous conflicts surrounding dangerous territories nearby. Constantly, Ligurdo shouted frantically after foes assaulted abruptly, losing composure completely while violent battlefield chaos intensified around exhausted Imperial soldiers. Multiple goblins unleashed ruinous impact sorcery jointly, creating gigantic explosions as Imperial fighters scattered desperately across devastated battlegrounds, seeking immediate survival. Empire troops overcame smaller goblins successfully, abandoning only the perilous goblin lord standing before exhausted fighters across ruined battlefields. Sinon reassured wounded Ligurdo quietly as both troops regained confidence, despite surviving terrifying attacks moments earlier during chaotic fighting. The Goblin Lord unleashed mighty manifestation sorcery abruptly, startling close-by soldiers while enormous weapons materialized across surrounding battlefields. Ligurdo laughed anxiously alongside Sinon, understanding their unbelievable survival depended entirely upon fortunate conditions rather than true superior strength against enemies. Ligurdo spotted the Goblin Lord brought unusual arms strangely, creating Sinon understanding dangerous connections existed behind mysterious battlefield events unfolding. Sinon spotted the Goblin Lord wielded ordinary wooden arms strangely, understanding concealed weaknesses possibly existed beyond terrifying magical abilities during combat encounters. Ligurdo triggered Flame Sword enchantment promptly, startling close-by troops while preparing decisive attacks against the advancing Goblin Lord alone across ruined battlefields. Sinon observed Ligurdo assault enchanted slimes as stunned comrades realized ordinary weapons suddenly carried destructive magical reinforcement during combat scenes. Ligurdo confidently described Rogue previously subdued slimes employing enchantment sorcery, convincing Ligurdo's studying techniques could strengthen future battleground survival greatly. Ligurdo praised Rogue's remarkable powers as celebrating experimental enchantment success, though Rogue quietly questioned his companion's reckless enthusiasm beside him. Sinon rushed fiercely towards further slime, testing enchanted ammunition opposing enemies while Rogue nervously monitored dangerous combat movements nearby. Carefully, Ligurdo successfully sliced mystical projectiles apart employing enchantment might, abandoning Sinon astonished as companions celebrated their unexpected achievement with excitement. Ligurdo examined Sinon's wooden sword cautiously, recognizing identical markings belonging previously to Arsenal's lost explorer gathering from Delaware Valley. He described Balra domain troops probably trained explorers employing monster weapons, causing Sinon questioning their cruel military experimentation methods repeatedly. Sinon disclosed Arsenal's captain strengthened wooden blades employing wind sorcery as carefully engraving magical flow patterns directly across weapon surfaces. Sinon promptly comprehended flame enchantment worked similarly, understanding ordinary swords stayed useless unless users mastered mystical reinforcement techniques properly beforehand. Ligurdo triggered enhanced actions opposing attacking creatures abruptly,
astonishing Sinon while enemies failed, reacting quickly against overwhelming enchanted sword strikes. Ligurdo rushed rashly towards monstrous foes, swinging enchanted arms repeatedly while powerful impacts scattered debris across surrounding battlefield areas violently. Sinon rushed alongside wounded Ligurdo promptly, guarding him as monsters continued attacking aggressively through heavy dust clouds and explosions nearby. He understood hostile defenses stayed extremely durable, driving both explorers struggling continuously while dangerous creatures pressured their exhausted positions without mercy. Rogue expressed regret quietly before seeking Sinon distract foes, readying concentrated magical power while Sinon confidently accepted dangerous battlefield responsibilities. Sinon unleashed rapid spear assaults opposing advancing creatures, creating enough opening time as Rogue completed tremendous magical preparations. Sinon smirked assuredly as observing creatures resisting ordinary assaults, confirming physical power alone remained ineffective against enchanted enemy bodies. Hugage goblins abruptly captured Sinon tightly, dragging him forcefully as nearby creatures celebrated their temporary battlefield advantage loudly nearby. Sinon fought frantically within monstrous grips as goblins laughed harshly, enjoying his helpless condition during chaotic fighting against advancing enemies. Ligurdo promptly rescued Sinon from perilous creatures, interrupting hostile actions while Sinon gratefully acknowledged his companion's timely battlefield intervention courageously. Sinon triggered Mighty Fire attribute enchantment, strengthening his armament dramatically as readying another devastating counterattack against approaching goblin enemies. Sinon unleashed Crimson Flare opposing colossal goblins, nearby enchanted blades with ruinous fire while charging aggressively toward enemies nearby fiercely. Ligurdo witnessed Sinon's blazing assault cautiously, understanding tremendous enchantment power exceeded ordinary combat techniques used previously during dangerous battles completely. Explosive fire erupted throughout battleground surroundings abruptly, driving goblins and nearby soldiers retreating fearfully from Sinon's devastating magical assault immediately. Sinon endured hurtful mystical strain quietly as enchanted arms continued accelerating rapidly, overwhelming enemies through relentless fiery attacks without hesitation completely. Remaining troops announced Dreadfire overcame mighty goblin forces successfully, spreading shocking battlefield achievements throughout regional military leadership headquarters quickly. Kalfa informed Maiden Luciella ongoing conflicts centered about Regulus' heart as troops attempted destroying dangerous teleportation magic circles across regions. Luciella gladly celebrated temporary safety with Kalfa, asking hopefully if nearby battlegrounds eventually stabilized against continuing monster invasions threatening civilians. Kalfa described many victories occurred near transportation rings, though wounded soldiers prevented neighboring regions receiving immediate military support assistance. Luciella wished creature assaults genuinely ended permanently, yet doubted peaceful conditions stayed believable considering earlier devastating battlefield disasters experienced. Kalfa abruptly detected troubling developments advancing swiftly before anxious soldiers entered urgently, announcing another important battlefield report inside royal headquarters. Kalfa and Luciella stunned as details about enigmatic mystical reactions emerged near teleportation circles, suggesting dangerous new threats emerging simultaneously across several regions. Ligurdo commended Sinon eagerly after defeating goblin foes jointly, though Sinon reacted awkwardly toward exaggerated compliments from surrounding adventurers. Regional troops appreciated Rogue's Dreadfire party genuinely, admitting their combined power exceeded expectations during difficult battles against overwhelming monster forces. Ligurdo and Sinon received recognition confidently, earning praise as true Empire fighters guarding civilians through dangerous combat missions across battlefields. They celebrated victory brightly beside comrades, discussing future gatherings as weary soldiers relaxed peacefully behind crowded military camps. Void casually entered Ligurdo and Sinon amid festivities, assuredly accepting invitations as surrounding adventurers reacted nervously toward his mysterious appearance. Sinon and Ligurdo confronted unfamiliar Void warily, questioning his identity fiercely after noticing odd clothing and doubtful behavior. Void expressed regret courteously for overhearing Kalfa's name unexpectedly, presenting personally calmly while Ligurdo remained uncertain regarding unfamiliar intentions nearby cautiously. Void reassured Rogue and Sinon calmly, vowing harmless intentions as grinning assuredly, despite both adventurers maintaining defensive stances toward him carefully. Void left quietly underneath moonlight afterward, thanking Rogue respectfully as enigmatic magical movements suggested dangerous hidden objectives remained unresolved. Inez came back alongside Nidhogg confidently, sharing zombie worms and powerful dragon breath attacks, successfully eliminated surrounding enemy forces completely. Rogue heard eagerly as Inez described destroying Lucifer's troops entirely, abandoning massive destruction across nearby battlefields through overwhelming magical attacks. Inez found intermediate mystical rings stabilizing Balra domain transportation systems, allowing magical energy transferring continuously between connected strategic locations safely. She assuredly planned unleashing undying armies across transportation rings, preparing devastating magical invasions using overwhelming supernatural military power against enemies worldwide. Rogue reassured flustered Inez kindly regardless her doubts about mystical strength, reassuring her contributions remained valuable during dangerous operations together. Inez respectfully appreciated Rogue for praising her achievements as Nidhogg silently witnessed their conversation alongside nearby forest paths. Rogue discussed commanding captured trolls cautiously, describing gigantic army advantages, while Inez calculated their combat strength against skeleton zombie armies. Challenged if Inez genuinely felt satisfied currently, Rogue noticing her uncertain reactions regardless recent victories opposing dangerous enemy forces. Inez's concern carried on conflicts would weaken army resources ultimately, although Rogue reminded her Nidhogg and immortal armies remained powerful allies available. Rogue contemplated Inez's concerns gravely before sudden actions halted discussions, suggesting perilous developments approaching their hidden location unexpectedly. Rogue and Inez detected perilous changes advancing abruptly as Nidhogg warned mysterious enemies moved significantly closer toward their hidden positions. Inez suspected concealed hostile strategies already spreading across the domain, understanding dangerous plans expanded beyond ordinary military confrontations. Horrifying hybrid creatures emerged fiercely before shocked soldiers, forcing Rogue's group confronting horrifying creatures possessing overwhelming destructive appearances immediately. Sinon recognized monstrous chimeras anxiously as scared troops fought, understanding dangerous creatures suddenly emerging across surrounding battlefields without warning. Void disclosed sinister goals quietly, declaring wishes commanding everything within the Empire while observing ongoing chaos spreading across entire territories. Rogue and Inez examined the hybrid cautiously as discussing prohibited dark sorcery responsible for creating dangerous creatures through corrupted souls. Rogue described necromancy consumed human dignity, transforming souls into tools as prohibited sorcery permanently twisted living beings beyond recognition. Inez suspected Void Murker caused the hybrid incident, as Rogue silently agreed somebody perilous experimented recklessly with forbidden magical practices. Rogue spotted 6 hybrid creatures advancing swiftly through the forest, forcing both companions into immediate preparation before sudden violent confrontation began. Nidhogg confronted the advancing hybrid assuredly as Rogue and Inez witnessed cautiously, realizing powerful enemies surrounded the entire dangerous region. Inez described the hybrid possessed immortality across merged lives, as Rogue quietly considered the terrifying implications behind such existence carefully. Then Inez neared assuredly alongside monstrous monsters, praising their compatibility as suggesting they belong together with her organization completely. Rogue stood alongside Inez and Nidhogg encircled by undead supporters readying quietly while enemies observed their unusual growing alliance cautiously. The hybrid assembled alongside several monsters as hostile voices demanded slaughter, pushing Rogue's group toward an unavoidable deadly confrontation. Immediately, undead troops abruptly rushed throughout the battleground beneath approaching monsters, beginning fierce combat while debris scattered violently around everyone nearby. Grand and close-by troops faltered as the gigantic chimera suddenly appeared before them, forcing everyone into immediate confusion and fear. The hybrid assaulted fiercely towards scared soldiers, causing grand shock while desperate warriors scattered quickly across the dangerous battlefield nearby. Several troops stared helplessly at the monstrous hybrid, admitting nobody saw such horrifying monsters before facing certain violent death themselves. Void quietly disclosed he caused the hybrid across dark magic, shocking Ligurdo and Sinon, while battle noises echoed throughout surrounding areas. Void grinned confidently alongside attacking undead troops, treating the deadly hybrid affectionately, while chaos continued spreading across frightened warriors. Void ridiculed Ligurdo assuredly as describing additional sorcerers and Empire soldiers already entered the battlefield, strengthening his overwhelming military advantage. Ligurdo abruptly recognized Void's unusual appearance, understanding the enigmatic hostile possibly belonged to the mighty Barla Empire leadership structure. Void officially presented personally as Void Murker, Chief Chancellor of Barla Empire and one respected member among 7 sages worldwide. Sinon and Ligurdo responded anxiously towards Void's horrifying status, understanding their hostile possessed overwhelming authority, intelligence, magical strength, and influence. Void demanded cooperation with the Barla domain as ruinous assaults carried on nearby, forcing everyone into dangerous political and military conflict. Sinon and Ligurdo angrily denied Void's proposal, yelling fiercely as readying arms and refusing cooperation with dangerous imperial ambitions completely. Legurdo cautioned Sinon the conflict would continue continually as both fighters coordinated carefully before confronting overwhelming enemies directly together. Void observed their resistance quietly, expressing disappointment as assuredly maintaining control over the battleground through superior magical strength and planning. Explosions scattered both warriors brutally throughout the battleground, driving Legurdo and Sinon into desperate movements while attacks continued relentlessly. Legurdo launched Snake Fang fiercely towards incoming foes, counterattacking fiercely as mighty slashes tore across the battlefield surrounding everyone. Void unleashed tremendous sorcery towards advancing fighters, forcing nearby fighters into defensive movements while destructive energy expanded rapidly everywhere. Sinon thought their assault succeeded briefly, but sudden inaction promptly caused confusion between both warriors during the dangerous confrontation unfolding. Void reappeared entirely unharmed before Sinon and Legurdo, mocking their weakness as demonstrating the colossal difference between their mystical powers. Void insulted both fighters mercilessly, calling their resistance pathetic as mighty light encircled the battleground and pressured everyone psychologically. Gran and further wounded trooper understood the condition worsened severely, watching helplessly while Void maintained overwhelming control against exhausted opponents remaining. Residents feared Finnish devastation as rogue and close-by villagers realized the advancing chimera threatened every building inside town walls immediately. Gran ordered each trooper towards protective positions as the massive chimera charged aggressively closer, causing panic throughout exhausted battlefield forces nearby. Troops blocked the gigantic hybrid frantically alongside city walls, understanding the creature would slaughter civilians if defenses completely collapsed there. Sinon and Legurdo rushed throughout the battleground anxiously, understanding hostile assaults continued worsening while allies struggled defending nearby civilians desperately. Void quietly discussed future negotiations with the Saldia domain as dismissing feeble opponents, maintaining confidence across the chaotic battlefield surrounding everyone. Legurdo challenged Void angrily, unable understanding why an honored sage manipulated perilous creatures and threatened innocent civilians deliberately everywhere. Void disclosed his cruel philosophy freely, thinking mighty others deserved authority while weak individuals naturally disappeared without receiving protection. Sinon and Legurdo denied Void's beliefs furiously, facing him straightforwardly as accusing him of abusing blameless people selfishly through violence. Void cautioned their mercenary allies would never arrive, revealing additional hybrid assaults already targeted remote backup supporting nearby defensive forces. He doubted Rogue's true identity suspiciously, thinking his unusual power and enigmatic powers entirely contradicted his supposedly ordinary background and status. Rogue readied secretly alongside Inez as discussing concealed truths, thinking Void would soon expose dangerous information surrounding mysterious powers publicly. Rogue appreciated Inez quietly before declaring he would never forgive arrogant nobles abusing control, opposing weaker, blameless civilians everywhere again. Inez defended Rogue, passionately opposing Void, claiming Rogue possessed true power as condemning Void's selfish arrogance and cruelty completely openly. Rogue assembled undead fighters assuredly alongside monstrous allies, readying final attacks while demonstrating leadership surpassing ordinary mercenaries and soldiers entirely. Inez reassured everybody bravely, declaring Rogue would certainly return victorious since his powers exceeded Void's corrupted followers and monsters greatly. Rogue progressed beside Inez, Nidhogg, and numerous undead fighters, forming an undying army determined toward defeating Void and protecting civilians from further destruction and suffering. War formally started between Saldia Domain and Barla Domain as soldiers confronted Void directly across the chaotic battlefield under growing tension. Rogue and his comrades readied journeying towards the SSS-level examination, while investigating Barla Empire's military strength and dangerous expanding influence. Several hybrid creatures assaulted Saldia Domain ceaselessly, destroying entire regions while Barla Empire's legendary leader personally appeared before terrified defenders. Legurdo fought mentally amid conflict, attempting delaying tactics as desperately realizing nobody truly understood the terrifying situation surrounding Void. Void ridiculed hostile troops as praising Rogue's exceptional powers, declaring ordinary warriors remained insignificant compared beside Rogue's overwhelming potential strength. Void understood emotions influence his judgment slightly, creating brief hesitation as observing hostile reactions throughout the unstable battlefield carefully. He discussed Rogue's unusual sorcery powers gravely, describing him as extremely troubling regardless already understanding previous reports about dangerous magical incidents. Void compared Rogue's power opposing mighty demon armies and hybrid creatures, believing Rogue eventually could surpass even his personal abilities. Grew irritated learning foes praise Rogue continually, Void deciding himself eliminating Rogue remained necessary, Despite ongoing battlefield complications surrounding everyone, sudden black fire spread brutally throughout the battleground, startling soldiers completely while confusion rapidly consumed nearby fighters and defensive formations. Black fire consumed close-by troops painfully as horrified warriors collapsed helplessly across the battlefield during Void's overwhelming magical assault. Void triggered Grand Cursed Flame Apocalypse, dedicating victory towards Barla Domain as accumulated explosion magic spread destructive black flames. Ligurdo cautioned everybody skipping black fire stayed essential, because ordinary magic failed completely while victims suffered burning souls and unbearable pain. Void described the assault combined SS-level integration sorcery with prohibited dark magic, shocking nearby warriors observing the devastating battlefield destruction. He disclosed Empire magicians strengthened his technique, allowing borrowed mystical might assisting massive battlefield destruction against exhausted enemy forces remaining. Void intimidated fighters mercilessly as colossal mystical attacks approach rapidly, forcing soldiers towards certain destruction against overwhelming enemy power. Void confidently displayed his mystical superiority, seeking horrified foes acknowledge his immense power while battlefield destruction continued spreading violently. Rogue found Empire sorcery stayed remotely connected, understanding enemy magicians continuously supported Void through large-scale coordinated magical techniques behind battle. Rogue, Inez, and Nidhogg reunited successfully alongside the battleground, celebrating completed preparations as allies admitted Rogue's crucial strategic assistance. Formally passed the promotion trial, Rogue returning confidently as an SSS-level explorer while companions celebrated his incredible achievement together. Happily, Ligurdo shouted gladly towards Rogue's appearance as Void quietly observed nearby, carefully watching the battlefield situation change unexpectedly. Rogue courteously welcomed Void quietly as both exchanged respectful words, creating temporary tension between allies and foes during dangerous ongoing conflict. He spotted Void emerged physically weary and unusually pale, silently understanding continuous large-scale magic likely affected Void's condition severely during battle. Void resolved stopping further irregular events stayed necessary, readying additional mystical actions while maintaining complete confidence before surrounding frightened warriors. Triggered a colossal transportation sorcery circle, Void commanding Barla Domain forces aggressively, while preparing coordinated attacks against weakened Saldia Empire defenders immediately. Void cautioned others opposing Barla Domain would ultimately die, as nearby warriors listened carefully during the dangerous battlefield confrontation unfolding. Void abruptly spotted unexpected issues developing, understanding additional army reinforcements supporting Barla Empire strangely failed arriving during combat operations. Void grew puzzled watching unusual battleground actions, questioning enigmatic changes while chimera monsters and soldiers surrounded the entire dangerous area. Barla Domain troops ridiculed weaker foes, seeking immediate surrender toward Void while attacking opponents unable using advanced floating magic techniques. Undead monsters launched aggressive assaults opposing Empire troops suddenly, creating confusion while battlefield controls shifted unpredictably between opposing forces. Several hooded troops abruptly spotted flying skeleton bodies advancing swiftly, causing confusion while terrified warriors scattered across battlefield areas. Undead troops and colossal hybrid creatures assaulted aggressively together, overwhelming defenders, while violent clashes erupted throughout surrounding battlefield zones. Void ridiculed Rogue and Inez quietly, insulting Void as maintaining finished confidence amid the chaotic battle surrounding everyone nearby. Inez stood alongside Rogue protectively, revealing hostile transportation rings already belonged entirely to her master's growing organization secretly for years. Void expressed regret courteously towards Inez as hybrid monsters gathered nearby, misunderstanding her hostility toward Rogue and their mysterious leader completely. Inez triggered Shadow Rip Devastation sorcery cautiously as Rogue observed, preparing another counterattack against overwhelming enemies surrounding their forces. Ligurdo and Sinan abruptly responded anxiously when mighty sorcery erupted, forcing both warriors into immediate defensive movements against dangerous attacks. Several rescued survivors appreciated Inez mentally as Sinan understood everybody survived safely, calming tensions across the battlefield surrounding nearby allies. Rogue expressed regret courteously towards Ligurdo as vowing assistance from masters, showing determination, despite arriving late during the dangerous conflicts surrounding everyone. He commended Ligurdo genuinely for enduring exhausting conflicts successfully, recognizing his condition as both fighters prepared continuing resistance against enemies. Rogue appreciated his allies assuredly as Sinan promised handling leftover foes, encouraging exhausted survivors protecting battlefield positions safely together. Rogue courteously appreciated Void for earlier recommendations, describing his successful promotion towards SSS-ranked adventurer status during recent conflicts across nations. Void heard quietly alongside Inez before changing discussion topics, maintaining composure as observing Rogue's unusual behavior suspiciously close by during tense negotiations. Rogue challenged Void straightforwardly about his intentions within neighboring territory, driving uncomfortable inaction between both dangerous political figures immediately beside watching allies. Rogue challenged Void cautiously, suspecting the Barla domain planned interference within his friend's birthplace across hidden military operations. Void denied the accusation jokingly, claiming he merely assisted creatures attacking the Saladia domain as grinning assuredly before everyone. He congratulated Rogue's survival as expressing confusion about 6 hybrid failures, questioning how Rogue fled their coordinated deadly assault unharmed. Void carried on observing Rogue quietly, revealing additional concerns as maintaining confidence regardless unexpected developments occurring across the dangerous battlefield recently. Several hybrid abruptly assaulted each other brutally close by, causing Void confusion while Rogue's group witnessed the monsters losing control. Void spotted Rogue's unusual eyes and concealed presence, questioning doubtful dark sorcery as carefully examining Rogue's strange abilities during battle. Inez ridiculed Void assuredly as Nidhogg confirmed their master abandoned involvement, creating Void confusion about Rogue's mysterious magical techniques. Rogue disclosed his unique Necromancer power called Necromancer's Resurrection, startling Void as describing the forbidden power controlling resurrected undead creatures. He described he overcame 6 chimeras and 3 trolls previously, then reanimated them across necromancy for army usage against enemies. Rogue disclosed multitudes of undead troops nearby the battleground, declaring himself commander of an enormous immortal army containing revived monsters. Rogue described his survival casually, revealing his exceptional SSS-level powers guarded him from serious injuries amid dangerous confrontations recently. Void connected Rogue's concealment sorcery with Kalfa as suspecting Saladia domains secretly hired death mages regardless public hatred toward forbidden practitioners. Sanin and Legordo responded anxiously towards Rogue's necromancer identity, fighting mentally while processing his hidden connection with dangerous forbidden magic. Rogue understood Saladia domain stopped concealing crucial truths, creating Sinon and Legordo confusion about their nation's secret political decisions recently. Void ridiculed Rogue as discussing manipulation across history, claiming mighty nations govern countries and citizens according to selfish ambitions constantly. Rogue responded with disbelief after learning Rogue practiced necromancy, fighting mentally as recalling perilous rumors surrounding forbidden practitioners everywhere. He described society feared death mages since many abused bodies, ruined nations, and committed cruel experiments using undead armies recklessly. Inez confessed Rogue mirrored earlier death mages somewhat, although his methods differed from completely corrupted practitioners controlling revived corpses selfishly before. Rogue described necromancy itself stayed neutral, as individual users resolved if their powers protected people or caused suffering throughout nations. He announced he fought alongside reliable comrades guarding his friend's homeland, while Void observed the unusual necromancer thoughtfully nearby. Void complained angrily since Rogue's appearance ruined crucial schemes, creating unexpected complications throughout ongoing military operations involving dangerous monsters. Glared furiously towards Rogue, Void expressing intense frustration as recognizing Rogue continuously interfered with his cautiously arranged objectives and goals. Requested permission guarding Rogue, Inez declaring foolish foes threatening their birthplace deserved elimination before creating additional devastation everywhere. Inez and Nidhogg readied assuredly for conflict jointly, vowing complete destruction against enemies while supporting Rogue during dangerous confrontation unfolding nearby. Void challenged if Inez and Nidhogg mirrored mythical beings, observing Rogue's allies cautiously while considering their extraordinary power and origins silently. Void dismissed Rogue's determination haughtily, thinking the Necromancer's resistance stayed meaningless opposing tremendous imperial power and dangerous magical abilities. Rogue triggered Necromancer's pledge, releasing control over undead troops and creatures as readying his immortal army for immediate battle. He formally summoned the Undying military alongside Inez and Nidhogg, facing Void directly with resurrected monsters and undead warriors surrounding everyone. The Undying monsters rushed fiercely towards enemy forces after Rogue commanded attacks, causing chaos throughout the battlefield against terrified Imperial soldiers. Empire troops faltered frantically as undead armies approached relentlessly, forcing frightened warriors into defensive magical attacks against incoming immortal enemies. Undead skeleton troops assaulted Empire troops fiercely, surprising scared warriors while relentless attacks spread confusion throughout the chaotic battlefield immediately. Empire troops shouted frantically as immortal undead forces overwhelmed defensive positions, forcing terrified fighters into retreat against endless advancing enemies. One skeleton warrior carried on attacking energetically regardless severe damage, demonstrating the horrifying persistence of Rogue's resurrected undying troops during combat. Empire troops understood undead foes never stopped moving, panicking as additional undying soldiers continuously appeared across surrounding battlefield areas. Void observed the undying military cautiously with growing frustration, fighting to understand Rogue's overwhelming necromancy and endless undead military strength. Void understood ordinary fire enchantment assaults entirely failed opposing Inez, creating confusion while observing her overwhelming defensive abilities carefully. He unleashed Ragnarok fiercely towards Inez, but she stayed entirely calm as confronting the devastating magical assault directly without hesitation. Void responded with disbelief after Inez triggered Black Hole and Will-O-Wisp, understanding her mystical powers exceeded expectations. Inez ridiculed Void assuredly, describing weaker opponents could never understand the gigantic difference separating their mystical strength and combat experience. Abruptly, Nidhogg moved swiftly throughout the battleground, interrupting fighting, while nearby warriors reacted with immediate shock and confusion. Nidhogg expressed regret casually after releasing Steep Might unexpectedly, as Void struggled recovering from the devastating magical impact during combat. Void observed overcame troops and creatures nearby him, realizing the battle unfolded completely opposite from his original expectations and strategic calculations. Rogue and Inez confronted faltering Void straightforwardly, describing plainly their combined power surpassed his abilities during the continuing battlefield confrontation. Void challenged Rogue's goals cautiously as describing Barla Empire valued strength above everything, causing Rogue visible confusion and concern immediately. Void announced personally the strongest assuredly regardless injuries, refusing defeat as maintaining pride in his overwhelming magical abilities and authority. Empire troops announced severe damage throughout multiple regions, describing immortal monsters continuously regenerated despite repeated attacks against their overwhelming undead forces. Horrified troops begged Void for support frantically, admitting mighty trolls and worms completely overwhelmed military defenses throughout important battlefront regions. Several loyal troops commended Void passionately, thinking only one honored sage possessed enough might protecting Barla Empire from complete destruction. Barla troops gave their mystical power, seeking Void replenish his crystal and recover enough power continuing dangerous combat operations. Void agreed their support quietly as devoted troops promised cooperation, readying together for another desperate confrontation against Rogue's immortal army. Assembled loyal troops jointly assuredly, Void seeking united resistance while Rogue and Inez watched carefully, sensing dangerous magical changes approaching rapidly. Inez glared angrily towards Void, accusing him of repeating hateful behavior again as eerie laughter spread loudly throughout the disordered battleground.